Hello, welcome everyone to the January 20th meeting of the Housing and Community Development Committee. Thank you all for showing up here. Could staff please help me take attendance?
Councilmember Isles.
Here.
Councilmember Harkars.
Here.
Councilmember Rogers. Here. Corey King.
Here.
Stephanie Murray.
Here.
Trina Nitamari. Joanne Zalomi.
Here.
Charlotte Hilton. And Chair Burns is here remotely.
Yep. And so in accordance to our rules, we should take a vote to allow virtual committee member participation.
Mr. Chair, I move that Councilmember Burns be allowed to participate remotely.
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Isles.
Yes.
Councilmember Harkars.
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers.
Aye.
Committee Member King.
Aye.
Committee Member Murray.
Aye.
Committee Member Zalomi.
Aye.
Committee Member Hilton.
The ayes have it. And if you could please add Councilmember Burns to the roll, please.
Added.
Thank you. So we will move along to public comment, and we have a pretty long list of public comment, and I'll be setting the time for 1.5 minutes for each speaker. And so we'll start with people who signed up in person to speak in person, and I'll go down the list. And first up is Susan King.
Never used this before. Hi, good evening. My name is Susan King. I live at 1918 Lake Street with my mother. I'm here on her behalf. I'm here on behalf of my uncle's family, Roy King, that lives on McDaniel, and my aunt, Harriet Lyons, that lives on Monroe. I am here. I'm a mother's caregiver, and my goal is to hopefully be able to keep my mother at home to age in place. I'm her caregiver. So thank you for your consideration on the circuit breaker program.
Thank you. Next up is Malika Gardner.
Okay. Thank you for your time this evening, and thank you to everyone who has written in support of the Evanston Property Tax Circuit Breaker Program, and everyone that's here tonight in support. And a big thank you to Councilmember Claire Kelly and to Ahmad Garrett for all of their work on this. And it's been over a year that we've been working on this. I've already spoken on the Evanston Property Tax Circuit Breaker, so I'll be brief because I don't want to keep repeating myself meeting after meeting. People are being pushed out because housing costs rise while incomes do not. That's the problem. We are also seeing Evanston's income diversity steadily disappear. This is no longer a city where the middle class can comfortably live. It's becoming a city increasingly accessible only to the wealthy. This program is not rushed. It's been developed for over a year in coordination with Cook County, city finance staff, the assessor's office, and community members. It's been before Finance and Budget twice, Human Services, City Council, and now this committee. The work has been done. The facts are clear. This is not a transaction. This is responsibility. What happens next is a choice. I'm here to support the Evanston Property Tax Circuit Breaker Program, and I'm watching the decision.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Next
you.
up is Hugo Rodriguez. If staff could add Ms. Antamari to the roll, please.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for serving our city. Appreciate it very much. I'm here to talk on behalf of the Tax Circuit Breaker program. I think that is a program definitely worth of your thinking, giving it your best thought. We need to keep our community as it is. One of the reasons I came to Evanston is because I thought that this was a very diverse community at all levels, financially, socially, ethnically, you name it, Evanston had it. Seems like we're losing it. We're losing it at big strides. We lost about 10% of the low-income population from 2017 to 2023. We also gained about 20% of the upper bracket on the income levels for the city. That just tells us the direction that this is going. I think that the tax breaker, circuit breaker, it's something definitely worthy of our consideration strongly. I will ask you to, if you could please give priority to seniors. All the other requirements, I'm totally in agreement. I think that seniors should be given priority on this program. And I think that it should be not used on a census tract position. It should be used across the city. We have diversity everywhere we go, and we're trying to protect people who have been in our city for a long time. So for your consideration, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is Robert Ondeman.
Good evening. My name is Rob Andelman. Live at 1218 Asbury. Grew up in Evanston. Went to District 65 and ETHS, like a lot of people, some for generations. We come back to Evanston because we love it, because we believe in it, and I'm afraid that we are losing the things we love and care about this city. The racial diversity, the socioeconomic diversity, and that it's really a place of opportunity. And I know the people on this committee feel the same way about the city as I do, because you're here and you're volunteering your time, and you and the staff have put in an extraordinary amount of work on the Housing for All proposal, and I applaud you for it. It is something that is not an option for this city. We need it, and it really cannot be delayed. I know there is a temptation to debate these things to some attempted perfection, and that is a mistake here. We cannot afford to wait. It should go to the council next week, should get approved, because the city requires it to maintain itself. You know, I hear all the time friends of mine whose kids can't afford to come back. People are moving to Gurnee or Waukegan, and once we lose those Evanstonians, they're gone because they're putting down roots other places. This is a special town, and we need to fight to keep it that way. And I would just add on, if I could quickly, on the as-right development, the benchmark for that is 2028. That is the least expensive and one of the most effective tools in this program. And I'd ask that you consider moving that benchmark up. It could be done this year, but it can certainly be done within 12 months, and it will be meaningful in terms of the as-right development that people will be living in instead of moving away from Evanston. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Darlene Cannon.
Good evening, Darlene Cannon, Second Ward. Affordability for homeowners is a critical issue that continues to be overlooked by the City Council. There's frequent discussions about the exodus of Black residents from Evanston, but rarely is there immediate effective plan in place to prevent it until now. This initiative is collaboration with other housing and equity efforts represent a real opportunity not only to help stop the exodus, but also to support all homeowners in Evanston who are struggling to remain here. I'm asking the committee members to support the 2026 pilot circuit breaker program fund with $500K from the NU Good Neighbor Fund. This is a tangible and timely step towards helping long-term Everstonians stay in their homes as rising land values continue to drive up property taxes. It's a meaningful investment in the stability and diversity of our community. This program doesn't stop growth of the city. It just protects those who are already here. And it's just something that's tangible that we can put our money where our mouth is, where we always talk about what we're going to do for the community. Let's try to do something for real. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Megan McClung.
Good evening, council members. My name is Megan McClung. I work at the Moran Center for Youth Advocacy, and I'm here today because housing stability means youth stability, and the decision that you make today, we'd urge voting today, but I understand it's going to be moved to next month, but moving along the Housing for All plan as soon as possible. I just wanted to share that as a lawyer at the Moran Center, I serve family and youth, and they have a lot of instability challenges. And I commend the city for making displacement as its top priority because we see families getting pushed out because of the lack of affordable housing. We see this as a disruption in children's success in health, in school, and in life. You know, every week I do see folks who come in and they are living in conditions and disrepair that needs to be addressed. I would highly commend the city for putting it in the plan, but it should be pushed along faster to have an oversight committee to monitor compliance with the RLTO, and then to have an effective means of investigating complaints, and then holding landlords accountable for those repairs. Also, in the new amendment to the Housing for All, eviction prevention was listed as one of the top priorities, but it should be elevated even more. What I would just ask is that there be relief in terms of that community relief program so that there are funds for tenants to access to prevent eviction. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up is Amari Radcliffe.
Hi, my name is Amari Radcliffe, and I'm here to speak on the Housing for All. I just wish that it get pushed along a little bit faster. I am born and raised in Evanston. For me to be 27 and moved out of Evanston at 18 with my son, I've never been able to say I've lived in Evanston as an adult. And I think that makes it a little bit harder for people my age to actually stay. We don't make the same amount of income as times before. It's a little bit harder to stay here, and it also gives a little bit harder of stability for me. I've moved around since I've left Evanston, and I can't really say I've called anywhere home but Evanston. Like I said, born and raised here, so all I know is Evanston. I still work here. I still support a lot of kids here, also volunteering with the Moran Center, and I just think that with times being changed, I feel like a lot of the adults my age will love to be back in their home city, and I just, hope that you guys will pass this along a little bit further, but also give the stability to the emerging youth that's coming along, but also the young adults that are my age that wish to be back in their hometown. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is David Soglin.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is David Soglin. I'm a lifelong Evanston resident and chair of the board of the Moran Center for Youth Advocacy. But today I'm here to speak as a pediatrician who has spent my whole career caring for under-resourced children. I support the Housing for All strategic plan. My main concern is the impact of housing instability on children. Study after study shows how harmful it is to their health, development, and education. A recent review in Health Promotion International examined 27 studies and found that children facing housing insecurity, not just eviction or homelessness, but frequent moves and rent arrears, are at higher risk for developmental delays and chronic illnesses like asthma. They receive less preventive care and make greater use of emergency rooms. And academically, frequent moves can cost a child nearly a full year of learning and increase behavioral challenges in school. That's why the American Academy of Pediatrics supports policies that expand access to stable, affordable, permanent housing for families. Children cannot wait for solutions. I urge you to adopt the Housing for All plan and to prioritize anti-displacement and tenant protections now. Evanston children need a clear commitment to concrete goals, not an exploration of options. The longer we wait to fix these housing issues, the more our children will have been harmed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Dominic Voss, and after him, we'll hear from Liz Bryant.
See how much of this I can push out in a minute and a half. Good evening, everybody. Open Communities, I'm here representing Open Communities, a fair housing organization based in Evanston. We're here to support the Housing for All plan. Its vision of a more accessible, attainable, stable, and integrated housing system is in alignment with our mission. In addition to support for more housing abundance and options, I want to shine a light on a couple of policy areas proposed in the draft. Firstly, we implore this body to take fair housing enforcement and education very seriously. The city currently has little resources or capacity to support educating residents about fair housing rights or to assist individuals experiencing discrimination with exercising those rights. Open Communities has also been recently learned that most Evanston residents cannot file discrimination complaints with Cook County due to a technical issue with a county statute. Given that little capacity exists at the city, this problem needs to be addressed swiftly, and I invite members to follow up with us on specific solutions that we can propose. Second, we applaud the prioritization of anti-displacement policies in the plan. Displacement remains one of our greatest drivers of inequity in Evanston, and we need to address it with serious policy solutions. This is also a matter of repair. The plan points out that Black residents have less than half the median income of white residents in Evanston, an injustice that can be traced in large part to discriminatory housing policies. Requiring good cause for eviction and non-renewal and providing emergency rental assistance should be of particular focus. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Liz Bryant, and I live in the First Ward. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I strongly believe that housing is a right and all associated costs should be affordable to all. I am very grateful that some Evanston residents qualify for state and county circuit breaker programs because currently funding for affordable housing is unfortunately limited. Through research, ACDC has identified Census Tract 8092 as those with the most need. I see little data in the proposed circuit breaker program that addresses those with the most need in Evanston. If money were no object, I would gladly support this program. Unfortunately, this isn't the case, and I have caution in supporting this bill as is. Members of HCDC use intelligence, data, and integrity to address the needs of all Evanstonians. They do not act with self-interest and sensationalism. I believe the proposed circuit breaker program should be a tool within Housing for All and have HCDC members utilize this program if and when it can be enacted without compromising those with the most need. If the circuit breaker program were to stand alone, I propose they generate their own funding and not take away from the more needy. The proposed circuit breaker program will take $500,000 from already limited funds. This funding is a finite amount and cannot sustain the program for a significant length of time. It will also not solve the problem of affordability during that time of use. I have issues with this and question if this is the best way to use limited funding. I believe everyone deserves affordable housing, and I wish there were funds to support this. I believe that the proposed circuit breaker program should be under the management of HCDC and be utilized if and when it does not compromise the most needy. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Kristen Kennard, followed by Kevin Grigsby.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Kennard. I am the Deputy Director and Director of Social Work Services at the Moran Center here in Evanston. I'm here tonight to encourage the committee to vote yes for the Housing for All strategic plan as soon as possible. We'd like to ask the city to target strategies based on neighborhood need and disparity. As an integrated legal, social work, and restorative justice organization focused on racial equity, we know Evanston's housing challenges are not evenly distributed. Cost burden, displacement pressure, and historic patterns of racial exclusion shape specific census tracts and neighborhoods. We urge the city to adopt a neighborhood prioritization plan that identifies areas at the highest risk of displacement, ensures new affordable developments are equitably distributed citywide, and uses ward-level and census tract data to guide investments. We also appreciate the recent revision that elevates the anti-displacement and tenant protections to the highest priority. I've been at the Moran Center for a little over 16 years now, and so I've gotten the pleasure of watching some of the young people grow up into young adults, emerging adults, and start their own families. There is an inordinate amount of these young people who have been pushed out of Evanston and who are no longer here, who I now travel to neighboring cities like Waukegan or Hoffman Estates or different places like that to now have any type of in-person contact with them versus virtual, because that's really important to us. I see it happening more and more, and so this is very important to the Moran Center. And so I would just encourage you to vote yes, and as quickly as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up is Kevin Grigsby, and he will be followed by Shreemer Shavanis.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Grigsby. I'm a staff attorney at the Moran Center. I'd first like to thank the committee for its time and continued efforts on the Housing for All plan. And I'd also like to commend the committee for recognizing the sense of urgency to protect current Evanstonians and from displacement and elevating the protection of residents to the highest priority in the revised version. And with anti-displacement now as the highest priority, the question still remains how, through a 10-year plan, will the city take steps needed to protect Evanstonians today, next week, and for the months, not just years to come. When considering anti-displacement efforts, we encourage the committee to identify what steps can be taken immediately when this plan is hopefully adopted to deal with today's issues. How can we help the tenant scared to report that their heat is not working today because they're afraid of what retaliation might lie in the months ahead? How can we assist the tenant dealing with the landlord's harassment when they know that they're unable to secure housing elsewhere in the community because certain landlords require a credit score that they're unable to meet? In 2004, the city took the steps necessary to catch up to our neighbors in Chicago and amend the ERLTO to add a right to pay and stay for Evanstonians. And now, as Evanston aims to establish its first comprehensive and actionable strategy with protecting current residents from displacement as the highest priority, ensuring that landlords are required to have just cause in order to evict tenants is one concrete step that the city can take immediately to support the goal to stop the displacement of current Evanstonians. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have Shreemer Shavanis, followed by William Carl.
Chair and members of the Housing and Community Development Committee, my name is Shreemer Shavanis. I am Associate Director of Advocacy at Connections for the Homeless, where we served over 3,000 Evanstonians in fiscal year 2025. Thank you, city staff and partners, for the significant work reflected in the updated Housing for All plan. The revisions strengthen the data, clarify strategies, and respond to community feedback. With that being said, Even with these improvements, the plan still lacks the clear commitments and funding mechanisms needed to achieve its goals. The Coalition for Evanston Housing will be sending over a letter of recommendations to ensure Housing for All is a truly actionable roadmap. So please look at your emails for that. But specifically, there needs to be further clarification on by right development. By right ADUs, missing middle housing, transit-oriented development must be clearly defined so the outlined goals are actually achievable. With these improvements, Housing for All can move from vision to action and deliver real housing stability, affordability, and equity for all Evanstonians. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up. Okay. I have, so I can't quite read it. Is it William Carter? Okay. And I think there's also, next is Darlene Carter. Is there a Darlene Carter? Because it's what it.
That was for Darlene Cannon.
Okay, good. She's up here. Okay. Thanks.
Good evening, folks. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I want to thank you all for being here. I know that you are volunteering your time. You are here for the citizens of Evanston, I'm hoping. So I have a question for you to ask City Council. Who are we here for? The elderly and these young kids you're talking about. They are part of this city. They are looking for the city to support them. Not big business, not the university, and not their best friend's pocket. The elderly and these children need our support, our help, our guidance. We make changes. We make different avenues. You don't like what this is being done, we're going to give you a great big tax break. You got big money. You want to open up a restaurant, but we don't like the way you're doing it, but we're going to make some changes so we can get it your way. We make all of these concessions for these outsiders who are not Evanstonians. We want the elderly and these children to be taken care of instead of big business. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next we have Mary Rosinski, followed by Jeff Barini.
Hi, thank you very much. I want to frame these home ownership trends in Evanston between 2009 and 2025 in a way that's directly relevant to the planning and development decisions and explain the reason why I support the tax circuit breaker program. In Evanston, our low-income population has declined about 37% in that same period of time. Our middle-income home ownership population has declined. I'm a realtor, by the way, for 45 years, so I see trends in addition, like everybody else does, but I do have direct knowledge of watching home ownership across the North Shore and in Rogers Park. But our middle-income home ownership in Evanston has dropped about 23%. At the same time, though, upper income ownership increased about 47%, and we're talking about trying to make Evanston a more affordable, and I think you all are trying to do a really good job with this, so we need to focus on many things here. The outcomes matter because zoning, land use policy, and development incentives do not operate in isolation from a property tax system. When a new development increases land values and assessments without corresponding income growth, the result is a predictable existing low-income and middle-income home ownership facing rising property tax burdens that directly undermines the housing stability and owner retention. From a planning perspective, it means that even well-intentioned zoning changes can contribute to displacement if the tax impacts are not addressed alongside density and redevelopment. I'll send you the rest, but I'm going to finish this paragraph. Increasing by right development capacity may expand supply, but also places upward pressure on land values, and pressure which is most acutely felt by our middle and low income property owners. So I hope that you will seriously consider the tax circuit break program to help our existing homeowners. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Barini, and he will be followed by Tina Payton.
Good evening, Jeff Barini, Second Ward. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Circuit Breaker Program in support of that throughout the city, in this very room, and from a number of you. We've heard a great deal about the challenges of affordability and the need to protect many of our residents from displacement. The Circuit Breaker Program is a way to address that directly. Those needs fuel a lot of what is in Envision Evanston already, and so Circuit Breaker is a way to get started at that and a jump on that. The one argument I've heard some people say against that is, well, there's already a property tax freeze for homeowners, and seniors already get this. Yes. And in spite of that, the financial challenges remain for many of our residents. So I think the Circuit Breaker Program is a way to support some of our neediest residents, and I hope that you will give it your support as well, too. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Ms. Payton, followed by Scott Roberts.
Good evening. Happy New Year to everyone. I'm in support of the Circuit Breaker Program. Even though it doesn't apply to me or I won't qualify, I've been in my house for 55 years. And I hope that some of the residents that have been in their house as long or 30 years or whatever would be able to benefit from the Circuit Breaker Program to continue to stay in their home. I also want to talk real quick about housing for all. Who is all? Who is all? Who is all when you have torn down Emerson and Jackson? You have evicted the Wesley tenants. That's 38 units, low-income units. Now, the Wesley tenants, their 2 years expires this summer. Do you have housing for them? Do you have housing for the other people? While you sit here and approve buildings like 605 Davis, the Albion, the Avador, E2, the Link, the Reserve, 1717 Ridge will house none of these people we're talking about. They will not accept their voucher because it's 30% AMI and they take 60% AMI by the own Evanston housing ordinance. So when we consider housing for all, let's really consider what you're saying. And I will say again, I have never received any grant money, and I take the housing programs and nobody's helping the housing that is already here. And if you're talking about just cause or anything that has to do with landlords, you should have a meeting with the landlord, the tenant, and the city of Evanston in order to make a proper plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Scott Roberts, followed by Sue Lolbach.
Hello, members of HCDC. Scott Roberts, Third Ward. I want to talk about the strategic housing plan, and I want to jump on the bandwagon of everybody who's saying we should speed it up. The calendar is too slow. There's a lot that's fantastic in the new draft. It's a lot of progress. It's clear-eyed about our problem, which is our housing shortage and too many residents cost-burdened. And we need to fix that. It can still be improved, however. It's really great, but it could be better. First, regarding missing middle, the language right now is good, but it's vague. It doesn't align with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan says missing middle by right in all residential areas, and this says basically just expanding it. It should be more concrete. It should say that they should be allowed, missing middle should be allowed throughout the city in all residential areas. The timeline needs to match the urgency of our problems. pushing major zoning reform to 2028 is too late. I'm asking you to move this up and add real milestones we can track, like a draft ordinance date, community meetings, hearings, and adoption deadline. If we can't measure progress, we can't manage it. And thirdly, zoning reform has to be paired with cross-cutting rules so these homes are actually feasible to build. Legalizing missing middle won't matter if parking requirements, red tape, and outdated rules make small projects too expensive or too hard. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Sue Lolbach, who will be followed by Olin Wilson-Thomas.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Sue Lolbach with Connections for the Homeless. I'd like to sort of second the positive impressions that people have expressed about Housing for All. Really happy with how it frames everything and with the priorities that are addressed. We do have some detailed suggestions, which we will send under separate cover. Tonight, though, I'd like to speak to the cross-cutting initiatives and the implementation plan. I feel like the recommendations before that are super strong, and I feel like those pieces, the fourth section of strategies, cross-cutting initiatives, are a little bit vague. The funding piece, I think, is great. I would love to see more about how that will happen, the research and the strategies for increasing the funding. In terms of expanding collaboration, I would really like to see more clarity on what the city wants to achieve by expanding collaborations. I would hope that it includes broadening outreach to all sectors of the community, increasing ease of access to resources for all sectors, increasing competitiveness and securing funding, and achieving success in supporting and retaining residents. And then in terms of the third cross-cutting initiative, expand data tracking and reporting, I'd really love to see more information on that tied into implementation. The implementation section is great. We know that this isn't meant to be an implementation plan, but we would like to see the strategic housing plan include what components will be in the implementation plan, what priorities will be implemented first, what we can afford now, what the next steps will be, who will review the plan, and so on. Last, how we spend the money we have now and how we raise more for later is primary. Therefore, we hope you'll hold off on any decisions around the circuit breaker program. Sounds like a good program, but we really hope you'll hold off until we can do a better assessment of the full range of needs. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Olin Wilson-Thomas, who will be followed by Frank Hill.
Good evening. My name is Olin Wilson-Thomas. I'm a 9th Ward resident. So to start, I support the recommendations in the strategic housing plan, such as the reduction of costly parking mandates, by right missing middle development, and increased development near public transportation. These policies will help more Evanstonians live affordable and dignified lives for years to come. But my main concern tonight is the proposed property tax circuit breaker program. Even with the amendments added to this program this afternoon, I think it's far from complete. There is still no cutoff that prevents wealthy people from accessing our limited affordable housing funds, even with the new income disclosure requirement. That's really worrying to me. At best, I'm 17 years old, at best, I'm 17 years away from being able to utilize this program. But realistically, I may never be able to benefit from this program. Young people are much less likely to buy homes than their parents. We're less wealthy than our parents were at their age. And how can you build equity when a decent entry-level job still qualifies you as severely cost-burdened? In 1960, a house cost twice as much as the median income. Now it's cost 5 times as much. Despite renters being twice as likely to be cost-burdened, there's no help for them in this plan either. As we've heard tonight, young people who grew up here are eager to return to the city that they love. At the same time, residents of all ages are desperate to stay. There's no reason to put a residency cap on this program. There's no reason to exclude renters. The circuit breaker program has deep policy flaws that cannot be addressed with a few tweaks. We need to send this plan back to the drawing board to give everyone, young and old, homeowner or renter, a fair chance to make it in Evanston. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Frank Hill.
Good evening.
My name is Frank Hill, Vice President of Rezoning for a Better Evanston. The first thing I'd like to comment on is the circuit breaker program. I believe it has good components, but there aren't enough details or data on its impact to evaluate who and how it would actually assist residents. The new amendments improve it, but do not justify the circuit breaker getting money ahead of other initiatives in the SHP, and the benefit does not reach renters. RBE urges its committee to vote that the circuit breaker program be included in the SHP and considered and analyzed for effectiveness in a dollar-to-dollar comparison alongside all the other anti-displacement initiatives in the SHP. And therefore it should be a part of the SHP and not voted on specially, separate, and apart from those programs. On the SHP, and I'm probably running out of time, there are a lot of great ideas in the SHP, and we thank the City Planning Department for putting together a data-driven and values-aligned plan. We would be recommending to the council tonight. We would want it to be recommended to council tonight, though we know that it is only up for discussion. The SHP says expand by right missing middle. We would ask that the SHP say legalize multi-unit missing middle and multi-unit and density near transit-oriented development to include diverse housing types such as townhomes, fourplexes, cottage clusters, and of course, multi-unit buildings. And then the implement right-sized parking policies. We understand the new transit bill covers a lot of Evanston. It doesn't cover all of Evanston. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So as people stick with me here, I'll be looping back around. That was my list of folks who signed up to speak in person. And before I go on to people who are signed up to speak virtually online, is there anybody who signed up in person? Let's see. We will catch you folks who got missed at the very end, but I will go to my virtual commentary list and then we'll loop back around, okay? So do we have people ready is Carolyn Laughlin? She online? We don't see Carolyn. We'll go down to, is Samantha Steele online? No? Okay. Is Rakisha Sams online? Okay. Is Sams? Can you hear us all right? You unmuted?
Yes, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. All right. Go ahead.
Members of the City Council's Housing and Community Development Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about property tax circuit breakers. My name is Rakisha Sams, and I'm a senior analyst with the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. We're a nonprofit and nonpartisan research organization that focuses on local, state, and federal tax policy issues with an emphasis on revenue sustainability and tax equity. My testimony today will explain how circuit breaker credits are the most effective tool available to promote property tax affordability. Currently, state and local governments use a wide array of property tax cuts, such as homestead exemptions, tax rate caps, and limits on growth and assessed value. But no tax cut offers a more targeted solution to property tax affordability problems than circuit breaker credits. That's why I'm glad to hear you are considering adopting such a program for the Evanston community. Other policies fall short on equity when compared to circuit breakers. Homestead exemptions, which exempt a certain portion of home value from taxes, are less squarely focused on the issue of property tax affordability, since they usually provide benefits to all homeowners, regardless of need. When the exemption is provided as a flat dollar amount, for example, homes worth over $400,000 receive the same benefit as homes worth over $40 million. And then another policy, capping growth and assessed value, misses the mark by even a wider margin. These policies tend to favor wealthier people living in high-value homes that are appreciating quickly in value. So unlike tax caps or homestead exemptions, circuit breakers measure the affordability of property taxes relative to families' ability to pay, thus making it a better option and a smart policy choice. And because property taxes are based on home values rather than income, property taxes are generally disconnected from ability to pay considerations in a way that income taxes are not. This disconnect creates a problem for families as their financial circumstances evolve. Someone who suddenly becomes unemployed, for example, will find their property tax bills unchanged, even though their ability to pay is greatly reduced. A majority of states, so 29 states and DC, offer some kind of circuit breaker, and though these policies are very widely in size and scope. The most common form of circuit breaker is the threshold style circuit breaker, and credits are calculated using a formula that compares property tax liability to income and offsets some or all the property tax that exceeds what is designated as unaffordable under the program. And so the state of Illinois does not have a circuit breaker, but they have above average taxes right now on working class people, and a circuit breaker on the city level is an efficient and targeted way to bring their tax liability down to a more mainstream way. And I think that in our most recent study, we found that Illinois ranks as the 8th most progressive tax code in the country. And if that's concerning to you, as frankly as it should be, a more robust circuit breaker is a clear-cut way to begin moving in a more positive direction for your constituents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have is Representative Robin Gable on the Zoom? No? Okay. That will bring us to folks who got missed, so you can come up to the.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sarah Peterson, a homeowner in the 6th Ward and the Executive Director of Open Communities that serves hundreds of Evanston residents each year. I applaud the city for your work on the Housing for All plan and turning our community values into concrete actions to make sure everyone can have a place to call home in our community. Reading the new Housing for All plan draft, I was grateful for the in-depth analysis of who lives here in Evanston. We have such a rich diversity in race, national origin, income level, age, and family status, among other characteristics. We need to take action to preserve and expand these rich varieties of people that call Evanston home. And because of this, we need to have a rich variety of housing options to house everybody. I was also pleased to see that renter protections were highlighted as an urgent priority to prevent displacement of neighbors. Renters here deserve stability, and Just Cause is one tool to do that. In a time when we're seeing civil rights under attack at a national level, and federal and fair housing protections in particular dismantled at the federal level, it is essential that we include increased fair housing enforcement and education at the local level. And I was so pleased to see that this plan does just that. Open Communities is the only fair housing enforcer in this area serving Evanston, and we welcome the municipal support in this plan. Thank you for moving this forward with this robust plan to make Evanston more welcoming for all. I encourage you to continue finding ways to put this plan into action so that we can make it a true blueprint for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last call. I think that's everybody. Okay. Seeing that we're at the end of public comment, we'll move on to the approval of meeting minutes. Can I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I would move item 4A, approval of the December 16th, 2025 meeting minutes.
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion about the meeting minutes? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call?
Councilmember Isles?
Yes.
Councilmember Harkaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Committee Member King?
Aye.
Committee Member Murray?
Abstain, I wasn't here.
Abstain? Committee Member Murray?
That's me. Aye.
Committee Member Zalomi?
Aye.
Committee Member Hilton? Councilmember Burns.
The ayes have it. So those meeting minutes have been approved. We'll move right along to new business. Can I have a motion in reference to item A, please?
Mr. Chair, I would move item 5A for action, a pilot property circuit breaker program.
Second.
Okay. I would like to, I know Councilmember Kelly is here to kick off the discussion. So you have the floor.
Thank you so much. So thank you all. I really want to thank everybody who's been so supportive and helpful. Senator Fine, Representative Gable, Commissioner Steele, Cook County Assessor Kagi, our staff Liza Roberson-Young and Liz Williams, as well as Ms. Sams from ITEP, from the Institute, on Taxation Economic Policy. Many stakeholders who've spoken with us and shared their stories, who are low income and struggling to stay here. I thank all them. I thank our residents who've worked so hard and have jumped in, Malika Gardner and Ahmad Garrett and others who've been working on this. Really deeply appreciate that. And I really appreciate all the council members who've weighed in with your thoughts on how to make this better or questions to look into. Again, we've gotten data from the Cook County's, the county assessor's office in terms of long-term residents, 15 years or more, as well as we've studied the ACS, the American Community Survey. So I just want to say, Evanston, just to really please keep in mind, Evanston, I think most of us really value Evanston as being particularly special and unique among the communities on the North Shore because of our diversity. I mean, that's really what makes us diverse and unique. And the problem is that diversity has been undermined over the years. As one of the speakers, the realtor, stated, we've seen a sharp decline in low-income homeowners in 2013 from 27% and down to 16%, as well as middle income from 35 down to 26%. We're not seeing those same shifts in Skokie, while we've seen in Evanston this trend for wealthy, it's almost totally reversed, where we've gone from 38% wealthy homeowners to over 57% now. So we're seeing a real change in the demographics of homeowners. And so what we're looking to do is to maintain our diversity, to stop the bleeding of the exodus of our friends and our neighbors, of those folks who really are the fabric of this community, these long-term homeowners. So, I also wanted to just go over, one moment. I just want to make sure you all got the modifications. I apologize for fumbling around here. The modifications, to be sure you're clear on that, about requiring disclosure of any non-taxable assets that might not appear on your income tax, given that it's possible if, say, some scenarios, I think they'd be very rare, but just make sure we're covering all our bases. If you're a retired person, say, and maybe you had a large 401k, but you were taking out very small withdrawals, and so it wouldn't paint the full picture of your financial capacity. Therefore, we'd require those disclosures. Or maybe you own property that wasn't income generating, but it was a second home. We'd want to know that too. That might not appear then on your income tax. So we've added that in terms of verifying eligibility in terms of income. And also reducing, and I appreciate all the weighing in on square footage to 1,800 to really encourage both downsizing. So maybe somebody is struggling in their home and they're not eligible because their house is just too big. And so we've moved that down considerably. And then finally, and also to encourage folks to move. So the idea of aging in place is more than just aging in your home, in that same structure. It can mean aging in your community, in your neighborhood, in Evanston, right? So that's also, we consider aging in place. So this opens that up to long-term residency to mean you've maintained, you've been owned your home for 15 years, but it can be, different homes. And I want to say on that note, we care deeply about renters, but this is a pilot year and we need to jump in. Circuit breaker programs are tried and true. They've been around forever. This is not a new concept. We want to get started now to try to stem, like I said, to stop the bleeding on that flow of displacement in our community. And so that's why we want to get started now, and we really hope we'll move forward with this. And finally, okay, so I think I covered the three main changes that I wanted to make sure you all saw. And also, we met with Ms. Mitzi Gibbs and Hitesh Desai, our head of finance, and Mitzi, who is our property assessor. And she also added what's in there recently, that she would verify that anybody applying has already applied for anything they'd be eligible for in terms of if they missed the senior freeze or didn't apply for it or forgot to reapply, that they've applied. Also, and anything else that's out there. And, you'll find even with the Cook County program that they're they even say it on their website, very, very strict eligibility requirements that almost nobody gets. You have to show spikes in your property, over so many years. But we would nonetheless, that is part of the application process, is reviewing any other potential break you can get. Now, we've set this at 20%, so I just want folks to keep in mind, we're not talking about, it is large sums of money for people who are struggling. We're talking maybe $2,000 or $3,000 when you look at 20%. Relief on what somebody would get per person. And this, again, is for the pilot year. And I know there were questions about renewal, I started to mention rental. So we would like to, in future subsequent years, include renters, absolutely. But again, this is to try this out. And it would be on priority based on income. Those most needy would be prioritized. And it's a little bit, similar to our guaranteed income program in that, the first year we'll work it out and hopefully expand this program so we can maintain this Evanston that we all cherish. And I think many of us, people gravitate to Evanston for that diversity in income and others. So, again, I went over those statistics, and I'll send those. I know, Juan, you wanted some of those, but I think it's really important. I don't think people realize how much home ownership has been trending just towards the wealthy in this city, drastically. And let's see, what else? I just want to mention a few more things, and I'll sit down. Finally, I guess I'd like to say that I hope that we will consider, any additional changes that you might want to make or amendments to this, consider making them and then moving this forward and directing staff, hopefully, to craft an ordinance and like we've done with other things. We've done this and we've asked council members to meet with staff to weigh in if they want to put anything else in it before it would come forward to council. Because we do need to, like I said, really help people now. We've talked to so many people, keep coming to us to saying, I'm one of those people, I can't make it, I want to stay here. We love Evanston, and we want to keep them here. We want to keep our neighbors here. So thank you all so much. Thank you all for your input on this, and I hope we can move forward. Thank you. And I'm here.
Sure. Have Councilmember Isles.
I don't have any questions. I have some comments. So the reason I'm glad we're talking about these two things on the same day, on the same agenda, is because the choice isn't between the circuit breaker program and nothing. It's between the circuit breaker program and a lot of things that we're going to talk about in the strategic housing plan. We heard from a number of speakers that talked about how they were impressed that the plan has elevated anti-displacement to the highest priority. We have to make a lot of tough decisions in this city. We have limited funds. And I just question why we would develop a plan with community input to ensure that our limited resources are used strategically to a maximum impact, and then take half of the money that Northwestern is providing for affordable housing and spend it on a pilot that's outside of a plan. It's not sustainable. It's a short-term patch for a small number of individuals, but it has a limited long-term impact. It doesn't include renters. 64% of cost-burdened Evanstonians are renters. That's twice as many as homeowners. So I certainly have sympathy for long-term residents that are living in their houses. But this is better done at the state level. So I was happy to see an endorsement from Robin Gable and Laura Fine. They're great state legislators. I encourage them to pursue this at the state level. If we do this, only 16% of property taxes for Evanston homeowners goes to the city. The other 84% go to other levels of government. So we will take this $500,000 and 84% of the money will go to other levels of government. I do not think that's the best use of our limited funds. I did appreciate the amendments. I thought they helped close some holes that I thought the program had when it was just focused on household income and not on net worth. I think it still needs some work if it's going to advance. I think home value ceiling is a better way of judging than square footage is a pretty crude indicator of how much a house is worth. You could have a very small house that's in proximity to the lake and its value would be significant. I think, the assessed value or a market cap value would be better. I think the best versions of circuit breakers plans have a way to include renters in them. I'm sure if you asked renters, they would tell you that they don't want to wait for help, just like homeowners have told you. I also think you should consider having it be more focused so it goes to the most needy residents, whether that's using census tracts or not. I think that's a reasonable suggestion. But, we're working on our council goals. And one of the goals that we're looking at right now is to prioritize implementing anti-displacement policies and actions identified in the strategic plan. I just ultimately don't think that we should be going outside of that plan that we've worked so hard on and that we've rolled out with the committee, with the community, and immediately go outside that and give half the money from Northwestern to one particular pilot program. So those are my initial thoughts.
Right, Councilmember Rogers.
Thank you. It is disarming that this is not part of the strategic housing plan. My question is, why wasn't it? This was a policy that was being discussed before the strategic housing plan was put in place. This should have been part of this discussion, but it's not. So here we are. And so when we say that, we're competing against each other, this should have been included. I think that the amendments, I've spoken with Councilmember Kelly a couple times over the weekend and beginning of this week. I think that the amendments do make a lot of sense and do move us forward. I think that this is something that we need to be looking at. It needs to be part of one of the tools that we use. And when we talk about the money that's coming from Northwestern, yes, this is money that's coming from Northwestern, but we do actually have a fund, an affordable housing fund that's already in place, and we are talking about using that for other purposes as well, beyond displacement. So I think that there's a lot of good stuff in here. I think there are still some little things around the edges that need to be tweaked. But I think that that's something that we can definitely do at the council level. And I would be in support of viewing this as a pilot program. That's part of a pilot program is you find out what works, what doesn't, and then you make the adjustments to the program along the way. So I'm in support of moving this forward to council.
Thank you. Committee member Zalomi.
Yeah, I have one question. Is how much money do we have in the Affordable Housing Fund? because I didn't realize, I mean, it's coming out of there, not the Northwestern money, so I just want to know.
Northwestern money goes,
Well, yeah,
the Northwestern money
does go
goes in
into
there.
But how much do we have in it?
Right at the moment, we have just over 5 million, but we have considerable commitments already. There's $1 million and, it's $1.5 million between home and the Affordable Housing Fund that will be going to the Church Street housing development. The exact breakout isn't finalized. It's how much home we have and can use first. But, and the rest, we had been saying we were going to sit tight until we get the housing plan.
So the rest, so aside from the 1.5 or so million, the rest is undictated for, or?
Not completely, I should be careful, because remember things that this committee approves, like the IHO implementation and the wait list, and the landlord-tenant program comes out of here. So there are some ongoing programs, and there is some staffing that is funded out of here.
But there might be 1 to 2 million, you'd say, that's not allocated.
That isn't allocated at this time.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, I support this, and I think the amendments are good, and, we shouldn't wait if they've worked on this for so long, and if the council would make some amendments to it, and I think Kelly's amendments are very good, too. But as far as just taxes, I know relief, like Andy Shaw, who used to be a reporter, I don't remember, Channel 7 or whatever, just had an article in the Tribune column saying maybe it's time to stop giving tax exempt to universities, hospitals, and everything. Because a lot of people don't know, 42% of our land in Evanston is tax exempt. It's just a tremendous amount. And then I have a house in Calumet City where they give a huge homeowner's exemption, much larger than what I see on my tax bill for my $300,000 townhouse, and I don't know how those are determined, but is that another way? Because it's over like $3,000 when I look at the house next door, and that's why my taxes on my little house down there are more than my 2-flat here in Evanston, because they give so much homeowners exemption. So that's just a side, but there are other ways we can look at to alleviate the tax burden in this town.
Thank you. Committee Member King.
So I have just a couple of questions. How was the $500,000 amount? How did we arrive at that amount for this project, for this pilot? And that's to city or Councilmember Kelly or whomever.
So it was based on it being a pilot year and knowing that it could be considerable more, but we also don't know. So and when we did want to include renters initially, that was very much so. So we were thinking a larger number, but then we thought, looking at it carefully and at numbers and the numbers we got from the assessor's office, that we should reduce it to a manageable amount for the first year to be able to test the waters. So based on just home ownership. And if I could also just address square footage really quick, why that was in there. So that's a special component just for Evanston that we added because home values vary so much across the city. We didn't want to say, so you could live in a very small house, say you've been living there for a while and it's increased, drastically over the years because you're in that part of town. And we don't want to say that we just want to support people of certain low income levels in certain parts of town. So in other words, we want to support you. In fact, we want to increase integration in Evanston, right? So we want to support folks. And that's why I think it's really important that this is citywide. And that's why we went to square footage in Evanston, because of the drastic differences in pricing. We thought that was our solution as opposed to sticking to just capping it at a value. So that, you could be in a large home that's worth little or be in a little home that's worth a lot, and then that wouldn't work. So I just wanted to address that. We want to support you, a low-income person who lives in a condominium on Central Street. We don't want to say you're not eligible because you're over here. We only want to support you if you're in this part of town. So, thank you.
And then, again, for anybody, in this pilot year, I mean, do we have data on how many homeowners will be eligible for this? Should we move forward with this as a pilot
So
program?
what we got data from both Kagi's office, the assessor's office, we wanted not easy data to get, but how many long-term homeowners at 15 years. So we got that. And there was a little bit of a difference between the ACS and the assessor's office between 17,000 and 19,000 long-term homeowners. Okay, so that was the first number. And then we got, it's at about 16% those that are at the low income level. So if you were to, but it doesn't mean all of those at the low income level would necessarily be eligible. But if you take 16% of those, either range between 17,000 and 19,000, we're talking about, it doesn't mean they're eligible, but about 2,500 low income owner-occupied homeowners. So, but again, that's it's that number. So of that, that's also how we came to about 500. Looking at that as a good number for a pilot year based on that number.
And then again, the renters question. What is preventing us? I mean, I know you said we like renters. We want to get to renters. If we look at the data that the housing gap analysis has shown us, that we talk about in here, they are the most cost burden in the city right now. So what's preventing us from just incorporating them into the pilot right now if we were to move on?
It would mean it's a little bit more difficult to analyze, but it can. I think it's 17% of rent on average is considered what one pays towards property tax. And we could do that as well. But again, we were looking at what's happened to our home ownership in Evanston. And long-term home ownership, I just want to emphasize through the whole Envision Evanston too, I mean, this is a really important piece of a city. Like you don't want to dip below generally 55%. That's when you start to lose stability. And I know we're a university town and we like that, motion of people coming in and the influx of people coming and going. That's great for a city, keeps it vibrant. But it is really important to maintain that. The folks who stay longer, the ones that generally shop locally, so you do want to support long-term residency also. So it was a combination of seeing how drastically home ownership among our Black population, on average, I mean, I think you all know those statistics. We're losing about 200 Black residents every year. And that legacy of owning a home and being able to pass that wealth down is just being eroded. And that's really important. So we thought we would start by addressing this, but absolutely expand it. I hope this will pass and we can get our feet wet with home ownership and expand it to renters and increase the amount that we allocate. So I'm 100% in favor. And if this committee was ready to say, let's move forward with that too, I'd be thrilled. So, but I think we just want to start and then expand it. So, thank you.
And then I just had a question for the city, just for some, just from staff on just some clarification. I saw in the packet that most of these programs are statewide. I think there's been a lot of discussion around that. Are there a lot of programs like this that are run at the municipal level or at the county level that we know of?
We have Liza online. Liza, do you want to take that question?
Sure. Liza Robertson-Young, Chief Legislative Policy Advisor. Thank you for the question. I believe you're correct that the majority of programs occur at the state level. There are a handful of municipal examples. I know Cook County initiated a property tax program that has some similarities to a circuit breaker structure last fall, but you're correct that the majority of programs are at the state level, and there is pending state legislation that would institute a program in Illinois.
Thank you. I don't want to monopolize the time here. I know we've got other stuff to discuss here. I would agree. I think this is a program that I think is extraordinarily valuable. I think it's one that would bring great benefit to Evanston and to a lot of Evanston residents, as people have said. I would agree that I think this is something that probably should be within the strategic housing plan, as opposed to a standalone that is separate from the oversight of the broader goals of the plan, knowing that we have such limited resources to accomplish a lot of goals. But all that being said, I think the work that's been done on this is really good. I think the elements of the plan are really well thought out. I would look at it more as a component of a broader comprehensive plan that we're starting to build.
Chair, if I could, I just want to clarify for the record, because there's been a couple of folks that have brought up whether or not this is in the plan or not. I just want to call attention to the committee strategy 1.2E on the top of page 50, which is explore local property tax relief. And the description does talk about providing local property tax relief to low and middle income households. So that is essentially what this program is aiming to do.
Committee Member Antamari.
Thank you. I had similar questions around, first let me preface my question. So I'm coming from the underlying assumptions or perspective that, or thinking that housing affordability is adversely impacted by lower inflows of residents or people coming into the city, and higher outflows of people leaving the city, right? And then specifically as it relates to renters and homeowners in general, and bear with me as I try to get all of this out. But basically, where I'm coming from is that it feels like Evanston is going to continue to have an affordable housing crisis, right? When there are a lot of people exiting the city, whether or not they're homeowners or renters, they're leaving. And it seems like, and this is limited knowledge because I am a newer resident, right? I was not born and raised in Evanston. So it's from that perspective, but that, and rightfully so, to a large degree, that a lot of emphasis is placed on, and a lot of the assistance is placed on helping those who have been here long term, which is, again, very valid to stay here. And at the same time, a lot of people who were either born and raised here or have, determined and hope that this will be their home over the long term, not having access to that and feeling like there isn't a place for them yet until they've been here for 20 or 30 years, but at that rate, they won't be here for 20 or 30 years. And so with this particular program, I understand why the emphasis is on 15 years or longer and helping our seniors age in place, right? That's a beautiful, wonderful thing. And also hearing that the generations that have come after would also love to also do that. And we're limited, right? Geographically speaking, we can't expand the land that we are on, so we have to build on it and build up. And so all of that to get to my question of wonderful that there's consideration around renters. What are also the considerations around newer homeowners that are coming into higher priced properties at the outset? So that's my question. And I'm also very happy to see that there was an addition to off-balance sheet assets as well.
Committee Member Zaloni.
I just wonder, are there any ideas for long-term funding for this?
I mean, I do think in terms of having a affordable housing fund, which we have, this directly impacts our residents who live here now. So I do think it's a good cost, a good way to, spend our funds in terms of affordable housing. I mean, frequently we've spent it on buying property that sat empty for a long time for affordable housing. We lost the tax dollars. This is direct and immediate. But apart from that, apart from potentially using a chunk of our affordable housing fund, I do have another idea. I am sure it'd be very controversial, but perhaps we could explore, and I'm just throwing this out here as an idea, the transfer tax for buyers. We don't currently have, per se, a transfer tax for buyers of homes over, say, $1.5 million. It would sort of be poetic justice that someone comes in and they buy a home for $1.5 million, maybe 1% of that is a transfer tax for the buyer. So someone new comes in very wealthy, 1% goes to help support long-term residents who are lower income at Evanston remain in Evanston. So that's a thought. I wasn't going to bring it up because I know that'll be that could be very controversial, but I think it's, there are possibilities like that. And I think that could be a nice way, potentially, maybe. I'll have to see I haven't fielded that by residents to get feedback on that, but that's a thought. So, I'm sorry? Sales. So sales from tickets, you mean like a, okay. So there's a lot of other possibilities in terms of designating income revenue streams for that wouldn't have to come directly from our existing, it could be revenue streams just dedicated for that specifically. So concert sales, potentially, transfer tax for very, very wealthy. I'm sorry? From the new Ryan Stadium. So.
Okay, thank you.
The question around the considerations for. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, so that is something that we do, like in our inclusionary housing ordinance, we have, that in a sense is addressing for new people wanting to come in here, where we have like the new high-rise going up on Davis, where we'll have 80 some units that are going to be affordable. So I think in some ways we do address that now, and we should address it more. And I'm all about protecting. I'm very much believe in like conservation districts where we protect small homes that and keep their prices low so that we have starter homes for new families. That's something that I'm advocating for, conservation districts, so that we do maintain starter homes for new families. But I also think our inclusionary housing ordinance also helps to address having units available for people wanting to move in at affordable prices. As well as we're looking at, I know, a number of cases for land trust homes that will be at reduced rates to buy. I think we're looking at some of that right now, as well as rentals through land trusts. So land trusts, homes that remain affordable in perpetuity. And I'd also like to see us modify our inclusionary housing ordinance so that the affordability does not sunset, but it remains affordable in perpetuity. So that is something I'd like to address. I hope right now ours sunsets. Many communities, the affordability in their inclusionary housing ordinances is permanent. Northbrook, Highland Park, many. So I'd like to see us do that too, to really protect the affordability in our city. So I hope that answers. No? So those are all new units, because I think that's what you're saying for people who want to move in.
Oh, no, just being able to capture and expand this. Look, I understand that it's a pilot, so it's focused on a specific resident, meaning like 15 years or longer. And I'm wondering about the conversations and considerations around other types of residents, including which you've addressed the renters, but then also those who are newer homeowners who may.
People who just bought a home, who I think if you can give me an example, so.
I'm thinking not necessarily 15 plus, not necessarily 2 to 5 years, because they may benefit from other programs that exist. I'm talking about that middle, that's usually the equivalent of a benefits cliff, right? When it comes to
Like 10 years?
programs like this.
Yeah, and I think what we've seen is, surveying and talking to residents who've been here, as we see them move out, and you have exit interviews or talk to people moving out, what we're finding is they've been here 20 years, 25 years, some 15, some 10 and move out. So, I mean, if this committee felt it should be reduced to 10 years as opposed to 15 to maybe address that, I think that would be fine too. But I think what we're looking at is the people who are leaving and being forced out because of that have lived here, moved here when it was affordable, and then it started to become not affordable, and that tends to be 10 plus, over 10 years. So we started at 20, reduced it to 15. I hear your concerns. I think it could potentially be 10, but I would recommend 15 to start and see. And again, when we talked with Ms. Sams from the Institute for Tax Policy, I can't remember the ITEP. She said one of the hardest parts of implementing these policies, that is one of the best ways to really address regressive taxation. She said the hardest part is really the outreach, like just really getting out there and make sure people know and you bring them in. I think we saw that even with our guaranteed income program, that we had this guaranteed income program, but we were having issues just getting people there. So I think, starting with 15 and really seeing how it goes that first year, and, hopefully we would spend $500,000, which I think is a relatively small portion of what we have right now. And again, these are people right here and now who are struggling. So I really hope we can move forward, and not have it folded into a year of getting it can still be part of the larger package, but I think we can just, move forward with an ordinance so that we can start helping people now. Thank you.
I have a couple quick comments. So thank you, Councilmember Kelly. I know I had reached out to Councilmember Kelly yesterday to discuss some of the changes, and I'm glad to see some of the amendments. Couple things, thoughts about the amount of relief. So I think it's been brought up before, for every $1 of taxes, the city gets 14. So I would be more in favor of capping the circuit breaker assistance at 14, because otherwise, in essence, we're paying other tax entities' tax bill for people. And I don't know how sustainable that is without identifying a source of income to fund this program. I also really, when we think about the housing crisis in general, at least the way I do, I think we're really getting, young folks and older folks are really getting squeezed out of the picture. One thing that I discussed with community members and, I proposed to staff has been like a home buyer program, which we don't see in the strategic housing plan, which is something I think in the future we need to move towards, because I think a narrative that I've heard from a lot of people in the neighborhood is, it's been great, my kids love being here, they would love to come back, they can't. And so that would be, I think, something we should shoot aim our sights for. When we look at the most, I think, impactful programs, I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but when we look at the strategic housing plan, there's the codes of dollar signs, and the ones that I think really move the needle, you see $3 signs, and not, all the policies, potentially do good, but another piece, as we look forward to the next item, we talked about, it's been brought up that the circuit breaker could be also applied to renters. We currently have rental assistance programs and that need to be expanded. So, when we have a lot of moving parts, I think it's better to look at things holistically. That doesn't mean slowing things down. I think it's been brought up by Councilmember Rogers that we had why wasn't this in the strategic housing plan in the beginning? I know in human services, we discussed it in September. I think there was going to be a motion to bring it to here sooner, but there wasn't the support of that, so I can't remember where it went afterwards. I think it was sent to finance and budget, when I think it should have probably been here from the beginning. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of hard decisions to be made about how much money we spend on each of these programs. And me personally, I'd like to be thinking of that holistically. And so I'll leave it there for more discussion. Sure, Councilmember Kelly.
I just want to respond to the point that both you and Councilmember Isles made about the percentage that goes to the city. And the issue is here that it's meaningful, that people stay. We want them to stay. That's the whole point. And so we actually looked at 25% of the whole bill. And after discussions, it's not about where it goes. It's about what will it take? How much can we offset your taxes so that you'll be able to make it and stay here in Evanston because we want you here? And that's where the 20% came from, not divvying it up. Well, because if we reduce it so much and they don't stay because it's based on the city's portion is only 14%, it defeats the purpose. And so it's a simple, 20% of your bill. That's what, if you're eligible and you make the cut, you're in line. If, the neediest, the lowest income first, depending on, how many we get. So that's what that's based on. And we want to make sure it's meaningful and it keeps people here. So thank you.
Thanks. I think Councilmember Burns is online.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Quick question. So, and I apologize, I'm under the weather, so if you hear congestion-related sounds, I apologize in advance to everybody. When did we add the property tax relief to the strategic housing plan, that language?
It was added
Was
with
that always in
this
there?
update. It was added with this update.
Okay. And I just, I'm saying this just for for community members who may not kind of follow the council or committee's deliberative process, to just say that it is not uncommon. In fact, it is the absolute norm for things to get added along the way. That's literally always the way it works. There's a draft that comes out, whether strategic housing plan, comp plan, zoning rewrite, city council rules, you name it. There's a draft that's released. It's released with enough time for the community and committee and council members to review it. And then there's additions along the way. That is the process, has always been the process and remains the process. And so it's not a question of why it wasn't in there. It's the question is, that is only a question if there was an attempt to try to add it that somehow was blocked or denied or voted down, which is not the case. It was brought up, I believe. It's been discussed at many different committee meetings, finance and budget, as one of the commenters mentioned, this committee, and but there was it was mentioned at the last meeting that why wasn't it included? And so it literally took a meeting to get that added. And so I just wanted to clarify that piece first. Secondly, I had some really good, I think, conversations with Councilmember Kelly. I want to continue to have those discussions. I have a lot of policy-related ideas. I won't even call them concerns, but just ideas that I want to continue to discuss with her. Sometimes just the way we do community in Evanston, things can get misunderstood, misinterpreted unintentionally, sometimes intentionally. And so I think it's more productive for me to continue to have those conversations with her offline. But what I will offer for today is just kind of some general thoughts. So one, I think it is, I am not comfortable supporting any new housing initiative, not just what we're discussing today, but any new housing initiative until our strategic housing plan is completed and we understand everything that's in front of us and what the needs are, so we can so we have a better sense of how we want to budget around those needs. And I'm not uncomfortable having a separate program to support homeowners. I actually think it's appropriate because we may want to take a slightly different approach with a permanent rental subsidy program. So I'm not uncomfortable with the idea of having something independent of that. But I do think all of these initiatives need to come through the strategic housing plan. And I know there's been a mention a few times about a pilot program. My experience over the term and a year that I've been in office is that the pilot programs that we've supported recently were funded by ARPA money, federal money, which we no longer have. So that was guaranteed income program was mentioned. That was funded through federal ARPA funds. The money that we're talking about tapping into today is local funds, both funds that we give from demo tax, and the inclusionary housing opt-out penalty, which we're seeing, which is a good thing, less of that. In addition to what you heard referred to today as kind of the Northwestern contribution, which was something that was negotiated or worked into the agreement with Northwestern that brought us the Evanston community, or will bring us a new stadium as well as concerts. So it's not something that just came out of nowhere. All of that was very intentionally worked into that agreement so that, and that represents the single largest contribution to Evanston's affordable housing fund in Evanston's history. And all of that was done intentionally to help fund the activities that come out of this strategic housing process that we are engaged in today. And so if we want to speed up the strategic housing planning process, because we think it's really important that a component of it, property tax relief, get approved, I'm happy to do that. If we want to move strategic housing plan forward tonight, I think it's just all for discussion, but if we want to make a motion to move it to council so we can discuss strategic housing and property tax relief, among other relief that we need in the community, I'm happy to do that as long as the committee feels like they've had enough time to weigh in on it. So again, I'm more than happy to move things quickly so that they can get approved sooner than later. I'm not comfortable detaching one initiative away from the strategic housing plan. I don't necessarily think it requires a pilot. I think we understand that this will have that any type of subsidy for renters, for homeowners, as long as we kind of target those who need it the most, will have a positive impact. So I don't necessarily, I'm fine with approving a more permanent version of the program, and certainly continuing to learn as we do with any program and make adjustments, but I don't necessarily need a pilot program with this. I think we just figure out the best way to do it, along with every other initiative that we think is going to help with anti-displacement in Evanston, and we move those things forward. And then I guess the last thing I'll say is there was I'll leave it there for now. So again, those are my general thoughts. And again, I'm more than happy to move all of this forward if, again, committee feels like they've weighed in enough. Looking forward to hearing what other committee members have to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Riles.
So Councilmember Burns said some of the things that I was interested in saying. So what are our choices? Our choices are to refer this to council, or do we have the option to have this folded into the strategic housing plan on page 50, point E, which is under the housing stability section, 1.2. So 1.2E talks about exploring local property tax relief. That sounds like a good space for a circuit breaker plan. So what does staff need from us?
Liza, do you want to take that, or do you want community development to respond?
I think if community development could respond to folding this into the strategic housing plan, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think from community development's perspective, the tax relief initiative that's in the plan could potentially result in a similar program being proposed and moved forward. So we do feel like it is captured. As it relates to the referral, I think it's up to the committee if you'd like to make a separate motion and recommendation to City Council on what's before you this evening. So that motion could, for example, be, we recommend that this be part of the strategic housing plan, if that's the direction the committee wants to go.
Well, then that's exactly what I'm going to do. I make a motion that we include this plan or have this plan included under section 1.2E, explore the local property tax relief, and that be the recommendation to council.
Second.
Do we have discussion? So, Councilmember Rogers, I see your light on.
My light was on before, but I'll speak to this at this point. First off, I want to clarify one thing. We keep saying 14% is our tax portion. Our tax portion is about 20% because we roll in the library and the city's portion. And when you add those two together, it is about 20%. So 14% is not the correct number. So I just want to clarify that. I also want to respond to something Councilmember Burns said, where things get added. Yes, that is the legislative process where things get added. My concern is that this was a topic of discussion long before the strategic housing plan was presented, and we're just seeing it rolled in here at the very end. And it should have been included from the very beginning. It was a topic of discussion long before the strategic housing plan was presented. It should have been included. And I kind of feel like this is, this whole process has been a little bit messed up because of the fact that we're now rolling it into something else when it was actually should have been included from the very beginning.
Can I make a friendly amendment? Sure. In the 1.2, where you say explore, I think, so I hear everyone says, and this is, I'll even admit one of my frustrations with the way things work is like, we meet once a month, maybe not always once a month. We have a pretty huge backlog of legislation to get through, and everyone thinks that their legislation is the most important. I do the same thing when I have something that I want to move forward. If you're amenable, I think we should be able to do, if we're considering this as a whole, and I'll kind of read the room, I think we can do some sort of pilot. I would be comfortable with some sort of pilot if in consideration to the whole program, rather than explore, maybe not have it be, this isn't going to be pushed off for like 2 years. So I think.
Is there a verb you like better than explore?
The verb, I'll ask staff. Staff is looking at me, so.
Potentially implement or pursue?
Pursue, yeah. And that means it's not going to sit there and not be acted on. And I think there'll be, and the other thing too is, as you know, there's a sense of urgency to all this. So I want to get some sense from staff as to what your workflow looks like in order for the strategic housing plan to move forward, and what that would look like timing-wise.
Before we go there, I do have a point of order. I believe I made a motion at the very beginning to begin discussion on this. So I don't believe that Councilmember Isles' motion is in order while another motion is on the table, because it was for action to move this to City Council.
We don't have.
So I would ask that my motion be voted on, and if it fails, then a second motion be made in the interest of following procedure.
I would agree with Councilmember Rogers in terms of the point of order. So just to clarify, I believe the motion, do you want to repeat the motion so just everyone knows what they're voting on before we call the vote?
Yes, I'm sorry, flicking my light on, I don't need to do that. My motion was to move this forward to City Council to take action on it.
Okay.
That's fine. Yeah.
Should we call the roll on that?
Is there any
Discussion?
Is it?
Or does anyone need clarification on what you're voting
I don't know
on?
if you can hear me. Can anybody hear me?
Yes. Councilmember Burns.
Okay. If you can make a friendly amendment, Councilmember Rogers, to include, you don't have to, but this is what will get my vote, to include the strategic housing plan. Again, I don't feel comfortable moving this forward without moving forward the strategic housing plan. More than happy to expedite both of them so that not only we can support homeowners through property tax relief, but also renters, and as well as the other initiatives that we'll approve to try to prevent additional displacement in Evanston. But I need all that to happen at once. So if you're comfortable making that amendment, happy to support it. If not, that's the only reason, to make it clear to all the public that I won't be voting for it, because we're not moving it forward all the way at once, everything forward at once.
So I would not accept it as a friendly amendment because I don't believe that it can be done, because the item that you're asking to move forward is listed for discussion only, and therefore it would be a violation of procedure to move it forward when it's been listed as only discussion. I don't think we can make the call to change it from discussion to action.
That is correct. To clarify, Councilmember Burns, are you saying that council should, the recommendation from HCDC is that council should adopt or implement a circuit breaker program upon completion or adoption of the Housing for All plan? Is that what you're asking for?
What I'm saying is I think that we need to understand all the initiatives that we want to prioritize before we determine how much funding is going to go. Well, one, we need to know what those priorities are, and then from there, we can have another discussion about how each one is funded, and whether that be with affordable housing funds or any other fund. But there's no way to do both of these things unless they're at council at the same time. We need to be both discussing the strategic housing plan and those recommendations, which include property tax relief, which has already been mentioned, along with the circuit breaker program. So all that has to happen at once for me to feel comfortable supporting it. And I'm happy to, if there's some other way we can expedite getting the strategic housing plan to council around the same time of the circuit breaker program, I'm happy to support that as well.
Well, I think just for everyone up here, because a Housing for All plan update is listed for discussion, we cannot fast track that to council. So there would be just the vote on the circuit breaker as a standalone.
Would you like me to take roll?
Yeah, we can take roll. We'll have to take roll.
Councilmember Burns.
No.
Councilmember Isles.
No.
Councilmember Harkaras.
No.
Councilmember Rogers.
Aye.
Committeemember King.
No.
Committeemember Murray.
Aye.
Committeemember Nitzamere.
No.
Committeemember Zalomi.
Aye.
Committeemember Hilton. 5 noes and 4 yeses.
Okay.
So now my motion is in order.
Okay.
Now the word you wanted to use, can you remind me? It wasn't explore, it was pursue.
pursue.
Are we allowing people to
Or-
speak from the floor now?
Just one second. I have a question for staff. Would it make more sense to take the previous item and amend it to the Housing for All plan as a pursue, as sub-item? I don't know. Or
I'm not sure if I understand. So you're saying amending item A or 5A on the,
instead of, yeah, I mean, we're basically hopping ahead now to, well, actually, now that I think about it, should we just move forward with item B and then roll this into discussion while these are like intertwined.
I just want to make sure, Liza, from a procedural standpoint, I just want to make sure that you're getting what you need from the Housing and Community Development Committee. I don't believe that there's anything stopping the referral from going back to City Council. It would just be the recommendation from HCDC on the motion that was made this evening would be a 5-4 vote. Is that correct? Or, yeah, sorry, 4-5 vote.
That sounds correct to me, and I defer to the community development team and to the committee on strategic housing plan questions. I'm happy to weigh in on this as a standalone process, but I defer to the committee.
Yeah, and I would say as it relates to this Housing for All plan, it would be in order this evening to direct amendments to that plan to change the language to pursue local property tax relief. And then I think deferring to Liza on the referral process, I think you made a recommendation this evening as an advisory committee on the referral to implement a pilot circuit breaker program. So Liza, I just want to make sure that that's what you're viewing as what happened here tonight and what will happen moving forward.
Yes, that's my understanding.
I'm sorry, I was having a bit of a sidebar, and I apologize for that. Could you restate?
So this would travel back, I believe, to the City Council at this point with a recommendation from HCDC reflecting the vote that you just took, that they should implement a pilot circuit breaker program. So it was a 4-5 vote, essentially 4 voting in favor, 5 voting against creating a pilot program, but ultimately the referral is at the discretion of the City Council. You're just an advisory committee.
Right, so this moves forward to
Correct.
City Council regardless, just
Correct. Yes, I just want to make sure that that's clear from
That's
a
what I was
process
having
standpoint.
the discussion about.
Yes.
Because I'm still unclear sometimes on whether certain committees
Yep.
kill legislation or don't.
No, my understanding, and Liza, please correct me if I'm wrong, because you're much more familiar with the referrals process, but I believe you are acting in the capacity of an advisory role this evening, and then that will travel to the City Council, and ultimately it's their discretion if they want to create this pilot program.
Yeah, that's my understanding, that the result of the vote would be transmitted back to council as this is an advisory body.
Okay, so.
So I knew that this committee couldn't kill something. Only standing committees that are full of council members can do that. But the instructions that I want to transmit to council are, I want this folded into, and I think that's what there's an appetite and a majority of the board to say. So I don't want it to go with a negative thing. I want it to go with a positive advice that this should be folded into.
Then I would believe a motion would be in order related to the proposed pilot program that the committee recommends that it be folded into the strategic housing plan.
Yes, so that is the motion that I want to make before we move on.
Actually, I believe that would be a more appropriate motion to be made at council when it comes to council.
Okay, except I feel like I can make a motion to say what the advice of this committee, and it's a close vote, but it's still a clear vote that we would prefer this.
Council
to be
has
folded
access
in.
to the what is transacted here this evening and can act appropriately.
Okay, well, I've heard your opinion. I want to hear staff's opinion. Are we allowed to give specific instructions as our advice, as a committee, an advisory committee? Are we allowed to advise council and choose our own wording? Or is it just negative or positive?
Yeah, I believe you do have that discretion. Liza, I, again, am going to ask for your guidance here on how to pursue the referral.
I concur with your understanding.
I didn't hear what she said.
She said she concurs with that understanding. I apologize. We don't have our legal team here this evening, so it is a little bit difficult for us as staff to weigh in on the legalities around all
Fair
of
enough.
this.
And I don't think that this is going to council regardless. We're just discussing whether we send a negative vote, which is not exactly what I think our intent was. I think our intent was to say, we think council should fold this into the strategic housing plan. And so I make that motion now.
Yeah, I'll second. Excuse me, I'll second.
All right.
And with another recommendation that both be, if you can add this, that both be, expedited, to the, I don't know the exact language, but both be expedited within reason. I want to send that through. I want people to understand, like, there's an appetite to move these type of initiatives forward. It's the reason why most people in this town run for office. It's the reason why it takes up the majority of our discussions. This is not a new focus area of the city. Not even since I've been on, even before I was on council. So I don't think there is any pushback on this. It's more about trying to sync it up with other planning processes that are underway. That's all. And so again, Councilmember Isles, if you can just a friendly amendment that council work to expedite reviewing both the strategic housing plan and this particular initiative, then I can second that.
Okay.
And I'll let you come up with the language, but you get my gist, like that there is an effort made to expedite the implementation of any all the recommendations that come out of that are prioritized through our strategic housing plan, which would include property tax relief, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, my motion is that we include the circuit breaker program under the housing stability section 1.2E, and we direct staff to pursue local property tax relief, which is where I think it belongs. And if we want to add some language that you do this as quickly as possible, that's fine.
That's it. I'll second that.
Can I just repeat back to make sure that that's down?
Please.
So the direction is to include the circuit breaker program under 1.2E and direct staff to pursue local property tax relief as soon as possible. And does that also include the pursue component of the language?
Yes.
Okay.
And that is our recommendation as an advisory body to City Council, who will ultimately make the decision.
Would you like me to take roll?
Yes, please. Yes.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Isles.
Aye.
Councilmember Harkaris.
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers.
No.
Committee Member King.
Aye.
Committee Member Murray. Sorry, can you say the louder?
No.
No, okay. Committee Member Nitamare.
Aye.
Committee Member Zalomi.
Aye.
Committee Member Hilton. Can you repeat that? Okay. That is 7-2, yes and no.
Okay, can I have a motion in relation to item B, please?
Mr. Chair, I would move item 5B for discussion only, continuing our discussion on the Housing for All plan update.
Second.
Okay, open the board for discussion. Burry, can you kick off things, ask the feedback, or present your presentation, I guess?
Good evening, committee. Uri Pachter, Senior Housing Planner. I'm happy to be here to continue discussing the Strategic Housing Plan, Housing for All. For consistency's sake, I'm going to include a few slides that we've included for a while now, just to make sure that anyone new listening tonight or looking at slides later on will be familiar with the process. I'm sure those on the committee that have seen this many times, I won't read through all of them, but just want to give you that heads up. We are mainly going to be talking about the following things tonight. Community input, and what we've sort of generally broken down to in the memo as making the case, the background information, the need, the challenges, and the updated initiatives. These are the 27 items that we had included the first time around in the plan that we received a lot of community feedback on, HCDC feedback, and have made updates, discussed those in some detail, and then talk about taking action, the key part of this plan. Rake, if you click off Zoom. Perfect, thank you. So just a reminder, Housing for All is like the other strategic plans that exist at the city. It will slot in nicely with these other plans. We're looking at a 10-year time horizon. We're looking at needs, priorities, and focused on action. There are a lot of reasons why we're doing this. A lot of them have been discussed by community members and HCDC members tonight. So again, I'll just remind you as we move forward, collaboration, funding, a lot is at stake here. And we're eager to get direction and feedback from you. There are things that Housing for All is not, and there are things that Housing for All is. And we are, again, a reminder of that as on the slide. A lot of work has been done on the strategic housing plan, starting actually even before 2024, when City Council approved this as a key goal. As you can see, lots of different times the public has been involved. We've been in front of HCDC for input at various times. And then moving forward, this is just since the fall of 2025. We've had significant amount of public feedback through surveys, gap analysis, and draft plan. And as you can see, we now released the draft update a few days ago and are looking for feedback. A key component I want to highlight, I think as mentioned previously as well, what needs to happen moving forward is a vote. Council needs to take action, and that really is the point in time when staff can move forward and transition from working on the plan to working on implementation. So I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Reka to talk about the next couple items before I come back.
Good evening, committee members. I'm Reka Morgan, Housing Coordinator. I'll be walking us through community input. Just as a reminder, we did a survey with 677 responses from September to October last year. And then we've also had several HCDC meetings. We've seen this data before from our previous meetings, but we'll just quickly overview it. Here's the objectives from the responses from the public survey. Overall, there displays support from the respondents when the data was weighted by income. Additionally, we heard that all initiatives received majority support from respondents except for one, and our top supported strategies were 1.1 adaptive reuse, 3.1 expand fair housing education and enforcement, and 3.10 improve promotion of current city and partner housing resources. When we state that the data is weighted by income, we are referring to standard statistical analysis performed on the responses that we received. For example, in the form, respondents self-reported their incomes, and then we found that by income level, the respondent data did not match the income ratio for the Evanston population at large. Thus, to adjust for this, we weighed the data to more accurately reflect the Evanston population's income levels, which thus allowed our responses to change in a way that reflected this. Additionally, the preserve initiatives, and then create, and finally protect, which once again weighted accordingly. All strategies were supported by majority of respondents, except for 1.9, explore the creation of transfer of development rights programs. The form and response data provide an important insight into prioritization of initiatives and public view of issues that needed to be addressed. Finally, HCDC feedback examples. Here are a few examples of the feedback we received from HCDC just to give us a broad overview. Next, we'll be going over a new section of the newly updated plan. Making the case, we highlighted 3 different new ideas to better display and visualize information and data within the plan. By devoting a new section to Evanston residents with detailed profiles, utilizing maps, and additionally developing charts for data display, we sought to make the plan both more approachable and powerful in conveying Evanston's current state. With regarding to Evanston's residents, we dove deeper into household income, families and children, students and seniors in Evanston via income profiles, family data and charts, student population analysis, and senior data and charts. Here's an example of 2 profiles in the income section of the different extremes in Evanston. You can see these on pages 13 and 14 of the plan. Additionally, we added several maps to help visualize household income, cost burden, race and ethnicity, and household net worth by census tract. Here is a map that is included in the plan on page 34, displaying household income under $60,000 in 2025. The darker red indicates a greater percentage of that census tract. Next, we included several charts in the section. Similar to the maps, these charts allow readers of the plan to better understand and compare the data. The chart above, located on page 26 of the plan, demonstrates the percentage of households at each AMI level in Evanston who are cost burdened, meaning they pay over 30% of their household income on housing. Those who live at an AMI level of from 30 to 50% have the greatest incidence of being cost burdened in Evanston. And then finally, taking a moment here in the presentation to ask, are there any changes or suggestions that would better articulate Evanston's housing challenges? And I'll pass it back to Ori.
We will remind you of the 3 main questions at the end if you're really concerned. In terms of initiatives, there's been a variety of changes, and to summarize them, we focused on 4 different areas. So there's been 10 that have been strengthened in a variety of ways, either from language, like moving from explore to implement, changing the implementation date from a later date to an earlier date, or other components that strengthen those initiatives. About 12 are generally either identical or very similar. There have been 5 that have been incorporated into other newer initiatives or other components, and there are 8 that have been added through this process from community feedback and from HCDC. So here are just a couple examples. Just Cause was listed as exploring, and it was basically by 2032, and that's been updated to have more of an action orientation, and like the other protect and anti-displacement initiatives being done by 2028. Incorporated this example of employer-assisted housing programs that's still included in the plan, but it's incorporated as sort of a subcomponent of another initiative. And then an example of an added initiative is implementing a tenant or community right to purchase program that wasn't referenced previously in the plan. So again, another prompt to consider, are there critical initiatives that are missing from this list of initiatives? And then finally, taking action. There are a variety of things that the city put together to try to empower the community and HCDC to make these difficult decisions around prioritization. So one of them is adding a lot more information on each initiative. These show up in the strategy summary at the beginning of this section, and then within each strategy and an implementation, highlighting these different components. Some are a little bit more specific than others, but hopefully all together can paint a picture of impact, feasibility, cost, et cetera. Here's an example, sticking with the anti-deconversion policy. Here's just an example of one of, I believe, 12 case studies that we've included in the plan. Some of them are really specific and easily replicable. Other ones are need to be more adapted to Evanston. Everyone obviously will need to be vetted to make sure that it's appropriate for the specific needs of the community. And on the implementation side, more information around lead departments, supporting departments, who it helps, and again, funding component. So for this policy, there really isn't funding committed, but there isn't funding needed since it's a policy initiative, not a program that needs to be funded. And then finally, there are two additional prioritizations that this plan includes. One of them is all initiatives that are highlighted in blue are identified as catalytic initiatives based on a variety of factors. As we've discussed before, it's as data-driven as possible, and there is some level of subjectivity, and that's where HCD is asked to validate the way it's been prioritized and adapt accordingly. But all the catalytic initiatives are scheduled for policy approval or program launch in 2027 or 2028. This is assuming that the plan would be approved by council in June 2026. If that is later, then obviously these dates need to be adjusted and relative to when the plan would be adopted. And then protect initiatives, any of the anti-displacement initiatives under the protect objective, whether they're listed as catalytic or not, have been prioritized for policy approval or program launch in 2027 or 2028 for those reasons as well. And so from a implementation and action standpoint, are there priorities that should be shifted, such as catalytic initiatives? Are there implementation years that need to be moved back or moved forward? If everything's listed as 2027, we know that's not going to happen. If everything's listed as 2032 or 2036, we're not moving the needle. What's the prioritization? What's the adjustment that HCDC would recommend as this moves forward to council? So these are a summary of the three questions that Reka and I read off today, and we look forward to your questions and your specific feedback as we advance this forward.
I think I mentioned this briefly in the last discussion, but one initiative I'd like to see us put in kind of an explore category would be a first-time home buyer program. I think that's something that maybe, in my hopes, if we move and we get better zoning, more housing opportunities, I think it would make sense to start exploring a program for first-time home buyers to be able to live here, and also maybe focus on folks that have Evanston roots coming back. And I think that's something we could set off in the not too far future, but that would not be something that would make sense to spend time in 2027 or 28. So,
and just to be clear, that would be an additional initiative.
Okay. To looking forward as we.
Yes.
Councilmember Isles.
Can you talk about why you added the community right to purchase program? I lived in DC and I owned a house in DC. And I was subjected to a very extreme version of TOPA. And so I have a strong dislike for that program, and I'm kind of curious where it came from.
Sure. So there's a couple components. One, community feedback included that program. Two, there's a component of assuming the program is adjusted and appropriate for Evanston, whatever that means, would provide more tools potentially for the community and or tenants it would be opportunities for home ownership potentially, though it could be rental if it's an organization. But it would be a potential stopgap measure within anti-displacement framework, whereas we're moving ahead with those types of initiatives. There are definitely scenarios where rapidly a building is sold and all of a sudden that naturally occurring affordable housing is gone. It could also be subsidized housing that reaches its end of its affordability period.
Yeah, I guess I can talk to staff about it offline, and I can tell you what my experience was, which was bizarre and probably unique. It was certainly unique by what our seller told us. He said he'd been in business in DC for 40 years and he'd never seen anything like it. It also looks like from your case study, they changed the law in 2025. So I'd be curious to learn more about that. But I think that's a conversation that I can have in more depth with you afterwards. I just sort of wanted to put it on your radar.
Thank you.
Committee members, Zalomi.
Okay, I have a few things. On page 37, and it said with Ward 1 and 2 of rent burden, and I think that was a chart, how much of that is affected by students being rent burdened since they don't have incomes? So mainly in the first ward, and of course, part of the second ward has students living off campus. So,
Yeah, I don't have the chart in front of me, but I can answer generally. Yes, there are situations where there are students who aren't earning income, and therefore their cost burden would be high, and therefore that would be represented whether it's in the first ward, any census tract. That would be the case, and that is possible in Evanston, and so that's something we need to acknowledge as an impact to the numbers.
do you have any idea of what percent of, the students that impacts that? And I'm not going to say that, but I mean, if 50% of those people cost burden, are they students because their parents are paying for their education,
We do have aspects of the plan early on that highlight the breakdown of Northwestern students in particular, which are only one subset of students in Evanston, and that highlight sort of the different scenarios around, I believe, a little over 50% of Northwestern undergrads live on campus. So they're not included within households.
Right.
And then graduate students, a significant portion of them live outside of Evanston. And often are parts of larger households that have income, et cetera. So it is complicated. It's something that we recognize is influencing the numbers. I wouldn't say that it's influencing the numbers in a way that we shouldn't look at the numbers.
Right,
We should
yeah.
take them seriously and just know that that is a factor
Yeah.
within them.
Okay.
Can I make one other note about that area? We actually have 3 large senior buildings in there too. So it's really a very mixed, you've
right,
got
yeah.
Walchert, you've got Perlman, and you've got Prim Towers.
Yeah.
So it really does have quite a bit of very specifically low income people.
Yeah, right. Okay, then I still, as a I mean, I'm a retired realtor now, but my license is still active. And as a landlord, I still have issues with just cause. And a couple of years, when we discussed it a couple of years ago, there were 4 just cause and right of first refusal, and there were 2 other things that we didn't include in the revision of the landlord tenants ordinance. And we were going to have a meeting just discussing those, and we never had them. Now, as I recall our last discussion, just cause was not going to just be for units, 6 units and more. But I know it's a balancing act between the rights of landlords and the rights of tenants, but I do have a problem with that. I really have a problem with the TOPA, the right of first refusal. There is nothing to prevent a landlord from selling their property to their tenants. And so I don't feel the city needs to be involved. Let the market deal with that. I mean, I could never afford to buy back my, if I sold my 2-flat, I could never afford to buy it myself at this point because it has gained in value. I've owned it 15 years. But I just don't think the city needs to get involved, which would be, making a landlord wait 3 months for them to incorporate or whatever, so they can do that on their own. Then what will rental licensing entail? How will it be different from registering? Are there specifics on that?
Excuse me. There's a bit of a continuum. There's not necessarily like a line where rental registration and rental licensing is sort of like you're in one and you're not in the other. But moving towards rental licensing means collecting more data, having stronger inspections, greater enforcement, and ultimately having greater protections for renters. Obviously, like anything else, the key is making sure that it's appropriate for Evanston and having a balance that's not onerous to participate in the program or too expensive so that it would backfire and potentially raise rents for renters.
Okay, I just, there's no specifics on that. Then as far as rental assistance, is that what we have now, what was from township assistance? Is that basically the funds that we're using now for rental assistance when people are in an emergency, or?
Can you clarify?
Well, I mean, it says that we have rental assistance now. I'm just saying, where is that funding coming from?
Got it.
We actually have a number of small programs. The tenant-based rental assistance program, which is funded by Home, that is focused on families with children in the Evanston schools, and they have to be of a certain income, and that is, Home provides the housing support, the case management support, and all of that portion is funded by Connections, and that's the matching funds for that grant. We have gotten ESG when we didn't expect to get ESG again, and there is rent supports through that. You can do both rapid rehousing and prevention. We've been focusing on prevention because that's the thing that is needed most. And the other thing in CDBG, in starting with 2026, we're going to be using public services funding to provide short-term rent assistance to help people out under other circumstances. So those are things that are outside of general assistance, which does continue.
Oh, okay.
We do have 2 ARPA-funded programs that will be done by the end of this year.
Okay, now I got a whole several things here. Page 53, what are my notes? Oh, okay. This Explore the Transfer of Development Rights program, how is that recorded? Does the rights get recorded with the county, or I just, wondered what the legal, how it's handled legally.
It would be a zoning component. It's not the like new rights to land, but it would be a scenario where if there was additional development potential, let's say at a property that I owned, and it was naturally occurring affordable housing, and someone could knock it down buy it, knock it down, and build a 10-story building, and it was only a 5-story building. But there's room for more development that could be sold somewhere else to another developer at a place where they're maxed out if within the program, and council would have to approve the program. So money could be transferred from another site to that, let's say, naturally occurring affordable housing to help put into that building to help renovate it, keep the tenants in, keep the rates affordable, and then that other developer would be able to build sort of beyond where they were normally.
That purchaser, does he have to have cash? I mean, I think that's
a good.
Lori, I can.
Yeah.
Typically, the programs require that those transfer of development rights are recorded against the property as a deed restriction, so that in the future you wouldn't be able to realize that development potential.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't sell it twice.
Sort of confusing
Right.
for me. Anyway, okay. And then have transit properties been identified for development? I mean, which ones?
Yes, we currently do have a definition of transit-oriented development parcels. I will say that it does need some refinement, but typically it's through our zoning ordinance that those are identified, and they have been mapped for the city.
Okay, so they have been identified potentially. Okay, that's it.
I do want to add that the questions, any question is fantastic, and I'm personally happy to be here until 1 a.m. to keep on talking about this. I'm not suggesting that we should, but what I want to highlight on a high level is that none of these are programs, and most of them will have to come back to HCDC and council to be approved. They're intentionally not detailed in a way that's up at a policy level. And so if there's anything, as we're moving forward to advancing the plan to council, if there are components at like a medium to high level that are critical to say, let's just say something that you were talking about, you're particularly concerned about something's impact on landlords, and adding language that says that appropriately balances landlord concerns. That's the type of thing that would be really helpful as we move forward. The minutia will come back here, and hopefully you'll have an opportunity relatively soon as we try to move into implementation to dive into the details and hash out really the specifics of how any of these programs would work.
Okay. Committee member Antamari. Or we can go to committee member King first.
I had a question around, and it's a specific question. It was in the implementation timeline. There were a couple that I had questions around, but I can follow up with a separate email. The one that rose to the top of the list is around the centralization of city and partner housing resources, and wondering why that, why 2027 was selected as the implementation year as opposed to this year. And then the follow-up question to that then is, since 2027 was selected, what's the best way of putting this? How efficient are we right now with that aspect of our resource management? For instance, using the circuit breaker as an example, that pilot, that program, and similar programs, like how efficient are we with like identifying other resources and stacking the benefits? For instance, there are a lot here in Illinois, and knowing who's benefiting from what, and have they identified all of those resources and tapped into them? And that's just one example of like many, but since we're weighing, and we will have some discussion around potential programs, it would be nice to know, like, how do we view them holistically?
Sure. Okay. There was a couple components there. So one, I believe none of the implementation items were listed in 2026 because the idea is that that's when the program launches or the policy is enacted, and based on the timing of we don't know when this will be approved, but we're going off of a draft city council goal of this being approved by June. That would just leave that amount of time in the year. So 2027 doesn't mean it has to be December, and that can be something again that the committee can push and change on. These are that's what we're looking to hear from. In terms of the other component, I would say your specific question is sort of a hybrid of centralizing resources and streamlining, which we sort of separated out. And I would say part of the rationale was sort of aggregating resources and sharing it out with community members is a much faster process than doing what you described and making sure that we're not letting programs slip through the cracks or people slip through the cracks. And that's definitely a work in progress. So that's sort of why they were separated. There's definitely room for improvement, and that's why we want to tackle it.
Thank you.
Committee Member King.
Thank you. First off, I just wanted to say good work on this. I think it's a much better version than we had a couple of months ago, and I think the make the case section is really effective. I think the data you have in there, I think, does a really good job of showing how stark the challenge is in front of us. And how important the work that you're all doing to create this plan and get this moving is. So I think the visual representations were extraordinarily helpful. I think the extra data that you've put in there is really terrific. And again, I just think you've done a really good job of really, kind of telling the story and also, kind of informing everyone where the significant challenges are. So good work. We just spent 2 hours talking about this pilot program, and tax relief and rental assistance came up pretty much hand in hand in that 2-hour conversation. And I think it's pretty clear from the make the case section where some of our immediate needs are. And I think I've kind of in previous meetings have kind of talked about our need to kind of triage and prioritize. And I know I've shared some of that with you. And so I think it's like, when I look at this and I look at, this protect section in particular, this initiative, this first couple initiatives, particularly the provide housing and rental assistance and now pursue local property tax relief. I mean, I see those as, kind of immediate acts that we can do and be creative with the resources we have in front of us to really get moving on that right away. I think some of all of the initiatives in here are really important. Expanding fair housing enforcement, 100%, implementing an asset building and financial counseling program, 100%. Like, those are really important things that we should be doing. Those are longer term things, and those are things that are going to take time to really, Evanston to really kind of reap the benefit of. But right now, we've got a lot of people who are here today who are struggling by being cost burdened, particularly renters, but not just renters, as we heard today, very importantly, homeowners as well. And so I think the more we can do to emphasize the rental assistance, and again, I don't want to get kind of caught up in the kind of technicalities of where we kind of pull those resources from. I think, kind of where we can get creative in identifying resources for both of those entities. I think that's that's really important. And I think that's something that I think would have an immediate impact in achieving one of our goals in anti-displacement and really protecting the residents that we have here. So I would just say, you know, the more we can do to really emphasize those two in particular, the better. I had a question on the breakdown of the new housing units, and bear with me here as I find that section, which I knew I was going to lose. Anyway, how many affordable housing units has Evanston, how many new affordable housing units have come into Evanston over the last decade? Do we have that data?
We have that generally. I don't have that in front of me.
It would be good to
Yeah.
know that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, we have in the plan right now, we have 400 at the low end as new units we would want to create. We have 800 at the high end. And I'm just, you know, curious, is that, one step up, or is that 5 steps up, or is it, 20 steps up? I would just be interested in knowing that, because I think it would also help us in really thinking about, what's the optimum goal we should be looking at based on where we've been before, and is this really a stretch goal for us to look at? Because I do think that that's, again, going to be a critical piece of this.
Sorry, just to clarify, the overall new units has information included for context of the last 10 years. So you're looking for something similar for the affordable units so that you can peg.
Yes.
Is that twice as much? Is that actually about the same on the low end? What is the sort of multiplier? Okay.
And
Thank
did you get the number from, like, is it 20%? Is that kind of what I didn't do the math because I lost it, but how did you arrive at the number like 400 at the low end?
For affordable housing units? It was sort of cobbled together from different programs that we're anticipating doing over that period of time, generally speaking. But that makes sense to apply there so that that's relatable and understandable, so that the committee or council can say, we need to go further, let's do 3 times, or that's too aggressive, we need to pull it back.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
I just think having that data would help us understand.
Thank you.
Awesome. And then lastly, I just had a question about, I think I may have brought this up in a previous meeting, but I can't remember. Do we talk, and maybe I missed it in here, but do we talk at all about like workforce partnership and, housing related to partnership with some of our larger companies? And is that in the plan? I can't remember if I saw it.
Yes.
Okay.
So we had it, I believe we had it as an initiative previously, and it's included sort of in a subcategory of deepening and expanding partnerships, mainly because we're heavily reliant on those third parties, and this plan really focuses on what the city can do right now, with the assumption that partnerships are critical.
Yeah.
But that's included in there, not as a full initiative, but sort of a sub-component.
Yeah. Great. Thanks.
Note, I think what we will provide you is the IHO units, for example, because those are mostly all at 60% AMI, not quite all, but, over a period of time. And then the actual tax credit projects and things like that. So, we've got 300 IHO units in some either secured or in the pipeline, for example.
Great.
And we, the Anne Rainey Apartments were the most recent, fully affordable. That was 60 units, excuse me. HODC project will be 32 that are affordable, and the South Boulevard will be 60.
Yeah, great.
And so.
Great. And then I just had one other just comment on the affordable housing piece, and it's just, and again, anyway, it may be in here, but I think we talked a lot about the type of affordable housing as well that's required to really meet the needs kind of not studios and one bedrooms, but really looking at, those that are going to attract, different types of family situations. And so I think the more we can kind of address that in that affordable housing number, and we kind of look at, kind of a diversity of affordable housing units and kind of what we want to see in that too, I think that would be something that would be very helpful in just kind of drilling down into and making sure that, yes, we need, in order for us to kind of make a dent in what we need to, kind of address here, we do need affordable housing, but we also need that affordable housing to be the type that's going to bring the diversity of the population that we want to see. So maybe breaking that out too. I don't want to drill down so much because, but I do think having some of that would be helpful and really directional to kind of, if we're going to be specific about stuff, because this is so specific to housing, I think this is kind of the place to do it.
So trying to estimate the missing middle, if you will, excuse me, will be a little more difficult.
Yeah.
But there are things we're looking at in addition to the types of housing, like townhomes and all that sort of stuff. And of course, some of this is going to be influenced by zoning code changes. But we're also looking at building code changes. One of the things is single stairway, small flats, because right now you have to have 2 stairways, and that takes up a ton of space and makes infill lots not very practical. So that's one. Elevators. European buildings have elevators that can take somebody in a wheelchair, but not necessarily somebody on a stretcher. So some of those things are things we have to negotiate and are in discussion with our fire department, for example. So, those are also things that could affect affordability or attainability of housing that we want to try to create. So there's a whole bunch of factors there.
I don't want to, that's why I say I don't want to get so specific that we try to create perfection.
Right.
But I think, just kind of, even if it's just a statement or with some, around diversity of affordable housing.
Sure.
And, different solutions in different parts of the city,
Yes.
things like that.
And that's where our ADU work can come in, and also other things
Yes.
like our use of city-owned land
Right.
to develop housing on. Okay.
Yeah.
We can try to give you some perspective on that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Rogers.
Thank you, and I'll try to be short, noting the hour. So I just want to bring up a few things. I have concerns under 3.2B, where we talk about financing ADUs. I know we had this discussion during the comp plan at council, and finance was stricken from that. So I think we should be looking at making sure we're, again, having all of our documents kind of coincide with one another. The use of the words by right, I think are a little misleading because we're writing a new code. So I'm hoping that we'll write a code that will allow for things to be by right where we agree that they should be. I'm sorry, I'm driving through these really quickly because I just kind of want to get some things out there, not necessarily taking a bunch of time to discuss them. Kind of following up on what Mr. King was talking about a little bit, I really think one of the key things that we need to prioritize is looking at these units that we're building that are like the 24 to 36 units. This is one of the things I made a referral early on to sort of change kicking them out of the plan development process to help expedite them. But that's where we're really going to find those affordable units that are larger than a studio or a 1-bedroom. When we get to development downtown, we get studios and 1-bedrooms. When we get these types of buildings, we get 2, 3, and even in one case, I know of at least a 4-bedroom apartment. So I really think that that's something we should be looking into. I've noticed some of the language about trying to simplify to bring down the cost. And I think that's something council needs to be cognizant of, because we kind of are in the situation where we impose new rules and regulations that drive up costs for building, but then we say, well, we also want affordable housing. So I think it's for us to kind of find that balancing point between those two things. The transfer of development rights, I have a big problem with this one. This is a program that has lots of times been used to protect a building, but not necessarily to expand another building. We saw a recent case where development rights were transferred from one property to the other. They were able to maximize that. The smaller building actually gained no true protection, in my opinion, because it's already a preserved space. So I just want us to be very, very careful and cognizant of that. I mean, do I have the ability to create a development rights bank where I can go out and buy people's development rights, and then I get to decide where they go out? And if so, I'm going to resign from council because I think that's a much more lucrative position than the money I make at council. And then finally, I've raised the issues with just cause that I have before. I think lots of these are good in some places, but I also think we have to be very cognizant of how these impact some of our smaller landlords who really are providing that naturally occurring affordable housing or receiving subsidies already, and making sure that we don't make it impossible for them to do business, because if they sell, they're not selling to another small landlord. They're selling to a corporate landlord for the most part, or for a tear down or something like that, where those costs of displacing people is just built in to the process. So I think that's something we need to really discuss in great detail, instead of just kind of having it be as here's a displacement policy. We really have to look at what are the long-term ramifications of that, and how does that what are the unintended consequences of imposing that? It's important that we protect the renters who are living there, but if we make policies that cause those rental buildings to either convert or sell, we've not accomplished the goal. So that's just my quick little 3-minute speech on things that I would like us to kind of be looking into.
I do want to make one point. Our pro-housing grant includes an ADU, ADU strategies. And so that is, we will be spending some combination of funding on some ADU development as a part of that. And that's a commitment that's going to be through accepting the grant, and those are the strategies. So
I'm just trying to make our language consistent across all of our documents and our council goals.
what a
and everywhere
concept. Thank you. I appreciate
Because
it.
it's in the council goal draft as well, under the same language with finance. But we had a discussion about that at council and did change that language. But if we're under obligation, that's a different situation.
But it doesn't have to be in the plan. I realize
Right.
that. But I just want to make the point
Yep.
that is
Yep.
there.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Murray.
I just want to piggyback on, we have a lot of protections for renters, so I am firmly against just cause, for the record. So if it's possible to remove it, I'm all for it. But also, as we're adding additional units, can we get a specific number for the lower AMI? Looking at the implementation, there's the ADU and additional units, but can we get a specific number for that 30% or lower, an amount? Because we said you wanted to increase, 400 to 800 units. Honestly, the addition of ADUs, I don't think will reach that demographic.
You're right. It won't. Really, the only way we can get those units right now is through deeply subsidized construction. So when you get a low project funded by low-income tax credits right now, with the 9% tax credits, IDA has requirements of certain numbers or percentages of units that are at 30% and below and at 50% and below. And the way those are achieved right now is with project-based support from the Housing Authority or the state referral network. That is about the only way you get any number of those. Now, we have in our IHO that if people want to have fewer units and they make them more deeply affordable, then they can do that, and we would welcome that. Right now, at least in larger buildings, the 20% affordable at 60% is what gives them the best opportunity. But that isn't necessarily true of smaller buildings. So those are things that can maybe be implemented in some of those buildings more effectively.
I just want to clarify, are you requesting that sort of the same way as Committee Member King was interested in breaking down the affordable units in some way, either quantitatively or preferably quantitatively, but possibly qualitatively around larger units that are 2 bedrooms or more, you'd like something similar for incomes that are 30% or lower?
Yes, that's not just a studio.
Okay.
There's really nothing addressing that demographic. ADUs, the bigger developments, they're not addressing that. So are there any incentives for smaller, low-density developments? Have you thought about reaching out? There are affordable housing developers that knows how to use the light tech, the low-income housing tax credits, because the other issue is those tax credits run out. And if the developer isn't prepared for that, those units won't remain for that census tract. But there are developers that are well-versed on how to do it. But if you have these parcels picked out, we have property owned by the city, can we just prioritize at least a number for that demographic?
Thank you.
Great. Committee Member Zalomi.
Just a couple things. I just want to say, yeah, I think this version is very much improved. I liked all the charts, and the graphics really helped get a concept of numbers. One question, since we redid the RLTO and increased the amount of money that a developer has to give to the Affordable Housing Fund, have developers put more units on site or contributed, or were they more likely to contribute to the fund? Can you give me any sense of that?
I think that no one's opted out, and I think there hasn't been enough actual developments to actually have an opportunity to opt out.
Okay.
But at least has it been two developments have come through since RLTO, and all of them have been on site.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got several buildings in the works, so anyway, okay.
Just to clarify, are you speaking to the inclusionary housing
Yeah,
program? Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Have they
Yeah.
tended to build them on site, or were they giving to the fund since we increased the amount?
There have been a variety of developments that have been approved since April 1st, when the new ordinance went into effect. However, they were grandfathered in because they had been proposed earlier.
Mhm.
So there aren't any projects, I believe, that are under the new IHO that
okay.
have already been approved by council. That was under the new IHO?
I think.
Got it. There is one but it's not been approved yet. It's moving in the process. Yeah, there are a variety. And now they are proposing modifications that are under the new. Right. And there are a variety of others that have been proposed under the new. I haven't seen, from what we've seen, we haven't seen anything that's opted out as a proposal, but nothing's moved forward so that we don't know the end result yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying.
I also think one thing that's important is that the change in the state law is also a potential player in this as well, because when they get the tax deferral at 20%, more people, I think, are probably coming in at a little bit higher than what we have by ordinance because of the tax benefits that they get off the state program.
Yeah, I think it would be kind of foolish to not. It'd be really onerous if they didn't take the tax credit and they
And
got,
paid the-
like, I think is it 400,000 a unit?
It depends on the unit size, but it's over 400,000 to over $1 million, depending on per unit,
So
depending on the
it'd be
size.
a huge disincentive. So, yeah. I will chime in and also ask just for some clarity around language. And I'll just point out, I think some community members mentioned section 3.3, just so that's a little bit more in line with the comp plan language. And then also thank all of you all for your work on this. I asked Uri to parse out some data for me. So one of the really helpful things for me when I was going through the responses to the strategic housing plan, one thing I noticed, when I was looking, there was, for me, there's a surprisingly high amount of folks that strongly disagreed with the idea of preserving existing affordable housing, which I thought was kind of something that everyone would want to do. And so I asked staff to parse out the Ninth Ward data so I could just look at the Ninth Ward and see all the responses. And so what I found, at least for the Ninth Ward, it was about 12% strongly disagreed with doing anything. So I think, at least for me, when I was looking at the options and what the feedback I got from residents, you know, when you look at something that has, 60% favorable responses, it's actually closer to 75% because it looks to be roughly, and I didn't look at the other wards because I didn't have time, but at least when I looked at folks in the Ninth Ward, there's maybe about 12% that did strongly disagreed with all the housing policies that we put forward. So I think that's something that we have to keep in mind when we look at the numbers. And I don't know, I'm a stats person, so that was kind of fun to look at, but that might be something that other council members might want to do with their ward to see how that kind of skews, You see all these gray hairs? I look really tired all the time. I can't, yeah. But I just thought that was an interesting thing, and thanks for helping me kind of parse that out.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that information was done for all the wards and is available on the strategic housing plan site. It's just in order of wards 1 through 9, and then because it's asking about where you reside, there was a non-response or I don't know, and then folks who don't live in Evanston, that's sort of the order, and that's there for anybody to look at.
Great. I see. Is there any, I hope you guys have had enough direction from us. Does Councilmember Burns want to chime in? I know it's hard for us to see him when he raises his hand.
It's all good. It's late, so I'll hold my comments. I'll talk to only two things I'll bring up, but I'm going to hold most of my comments. I work with staff on that directly because it's already late. But one, I feel uncomfortable with the plan mentioning trying to address segregation. I think the school district many moons ago got in trouble with trying to create policy to social engineer, which led to, I think, the incorrect, misguided kind of busing policies that we had and school policies that we've had, which now thankfully, will be corrected once the new Fifth Ward school opens. But, I think it's totally appropriate to say, look, we want every neighborhood to be affordable. But I don't think cities should get involved in issues of segregation. I think we just want people of all incomes to be able to afford to live wherever they desire. And I don't think we need to mention segregation to do that. So that's one comment. I do want to make sure that we're, across all these initiatives, that we're finding ways to prioritize 8092 census tract. If you look graph after graph, it's pretty clear that area section of town has been the most affected. by the rising cost of housing in Evanston. And, I think with the school returning and the amount of displacement and other issues that it's had to endure, I think it's important that we're making sure that we're preserving the affordable units that are there, but also building new units so people can live there and return and benefit from some of the institutions that we're trying to bring back and others we're trying to and others that we're trying to kind of expand and develop. And so I would like to see that more represented in the plan. And then the other comments are very detailed and specific. And so I'll hold there. And Uri, I look forward to meeting with you and Director Flax and Liz kind of offline to go through some of my other points. But appreciate all of your efforts on this draft. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee Member King.
I realize it's late and I do want to get out of here, but I just had one other quick thing that I wanted to just comment on that I forgot in my initial comments, and that is, in reading this plan and thinking about all the wonderful things here, it occurs to me that there are huge portions of Evanston that are under historic preservation. And I think we talk about historic preservation and like the, Preservation Commission and, all of that. And I think that's probably something we need to address in here as well, from the standpoint of how do we ensure that our housing plan addresses the ability to, whether it's adaptive reuse or whether it's new housing in portions of the city that are under historic preservation or are a historic district, that they that we're not creating barriers to pursuing some of these options, whether it's ADUs or adaptive reuse or new units, new housing and new units in those areas. And one of the things that I think the comprehensive plan is in the current draft, is this design commission, and perhaps there's some synergy there with the design commission in kind of working through some sort of, discussion around dealing with historic districts in Evanston. Because I fear that, this will kind of be focused, whether it's, okay, this is going to be all transit-oriented development, or it's all going to be, and I think, we have to be looking at all of Evanston to be able to make this work. And I think acknowledging the fact that a large amount of Evanston, including my neighborhood, is in a historic district. And I think that, kind of adding some language around that might be worthwhile.
I was going to just note from a historic preservation standpoint, adaptive reuse is one of, the strongest, I think, tools in the toolbox, and our current ordinance wouldn't necessarily be a huge barrier to realizing that additional creation of units, because the preservation ordinance really takes a look at impacts to the exterior of a building, where when you potentially might see additional units within an existing footprint, with the exception of maybe adding new entries, that would be what the Historic Preservation Commission would be looking at. They would not be looking at density or anything of that nature in their review. So it is something in Preserve 2040 that is very much promoted, and I think also something that we can further highlight in this particular plan as we move forward.
Yeah, and in particular to kind of the new entry, as you said. Yeah, I think that's great. Thanks.
All right. I think we can move along. And we have no staff updates. Are we ready to adjourn?
I think we're ready to adjourn. I think we just want to circle back to expectations for the upcoming meeting in February related to the Housing for All, and kind of how staff is envisioning that kind of playing out to make sure that we're all aligned if the goal is to have this for action at that meeting. So Uri, do you want to just talk a little bit about how we plan to kind of handle changes or anything else between now and that meeting?
Yes. So We were planning on not making changes to the document between the update that was released recently and the next one for the. I'm sorry, it is getting late. I'll start over. The update was released January 14th. We are not planning on making changes directly into that document, but we can come with changes that we've heard from the committee today to that meeting. And we are anticipating having a vote that would include any and all additional changes. And so the vote would be X in favor, X against, with a series of amendments or modifications from the committee. And then afterwards, staff would update the document for city council as that next sort of larger update based on those recommendations.
So we could do a kind of consent agenda type. These are the X amount of changes, and then we can either vote it all as a whole, or okay, that sounds great.
Okay, and if there's anything in particular that would, based on that would be requested of us, now is a good time for us to know that, so that we can come prepared outside of what we already discussed.
No, I think that sounds great. And thank you all for all your work, and thank you to our residents who came out to share their opinions, and some of them even stuck around for the whole thing. So at that, we will adjourn. See you in a month.